Hey guys, welcome back to Recapcoin. Today, I will tell you about a new fantasy anime called The Black Summoner. The story begins with a young man named Kelvin, who has just been reincarnated into a new world. He died by mistake of a god, so he was allowed to choose the skills he would have in his new life. Kelvin wakes up with no idea where he is. A menu appears, welcoming him into the new world. He pushes the start button and hears a voice that begins to welcome him. It tells him that he has been reincarnated into a fantasy world and his memories have been wiped, a condition he had agreed to for more powerful skills. Kelvin is shocked why his past self would agree to have his memories erased. The status window opens, showing the skills he had chosen. He has a summoning skill that's S rank and an ability to get double the stats from leveling up. Seeing his skills, Kelvin gets excited to start his adventure. The voice tells him to head to the nearby town and register at the guild to be an adventurer. Along his way, Kelvin asks the menu if it will be joining him on his adventure. Remembering that he had his memories wiped, it reveals it is actually the goddess of reincarnation, Melfina, who he fell in love with and asked to be his servant, and she accepted his request as a way to take a vacation from her job. Kelvin is confused how he could love her without his memories. He asks if he can summon her, but she tells him he needs to become stronger and have more mana before he can. He arrives at the Adventurers Guild and registers as a basic mage, keeping his summoner skill a secret as Melfina explains summoners are so rare that kings would start wars to acquire him. He starts off in the lowest F rank and the clerk explains that you can only take missions up to 1 rank higher than your own and can move up a rank if you complete 10 missions in a row. He takes his first job to slay some blue slimes. He picks up a wooden rod, which helps to boost his magic ability, and heads to the fields. He comes across 3 slimes. Melfina tells him to try out his other S-rank skill, Appraising Eye. It allows him to see all of the slime's stats. At S-rank, he can see the stats of anyone up to 100 levels above him. Melfina tells him he can tame the slime if he can injure it first. Kelvin attacks using his rod instead of magic, so he doesn't kill it in one shot. To his surprise, the slimes are more challenging than expected, but eventually he is able to land a hit on it, weakening it enough for him to tame it. The taming is successful and he names it Clotho. He summons it and it seems to have gained a personality as it jumps up and down. Together with Clotho, they take on some more slimes. Kelvin uses his wind magic, taking out a slime in one hit, and Clotho runs circles around and crushes the other. Kelvin notices that Clotho is much stronger since becoming his summon. Melfina explains that his S-rank summoner skill gives his servants a bonus 100 to all stats. She also tells him he is the only S-rank summoner in this world, with others only at B or C rank. Kelvin returns to the town and looks for an inn to spend the night. Along the way, he sees an elf locked in a cage. He is disturbed to find slavery is common in this world but tries not to think about it. He gets a room at the inn and enjoys his first meal in the world. Kelvin starts grinding, leveling up and learning new skills. He learns the concealment skill, which allows him to hide his stats and summoner skill from others. Clotho was even able to evolve into a gigantic gluttonous slime. A week later, Kelvin is already promoted up to E rank. He is drawing attention to himself, completing his mission solo and getting promoted so quickly. A D rank adventurer, Cashel, introduces himself. He has a reputation around the guild for crushing new adventurers. He proposes that Kelvin join his party on a D rank hunt for a Black Ghost Knight. With his appraisal skill, Kelvin sees that Cashel has a murderer title. Instead of joining him, he suggests they compete to see who can kill the monster first. Cashel leaves and joins up with his criminal party members, Gimel and Raj. They plot to murder Kelvin. At a ruined castle, Cashel and his party arrive. They're shocked to find that all the monsters are already dead. Kelvin appears and tells them that he has seen through their scheme and challenges them to a fight. He makes fun of Raj, who charges straight at him. He falls into a trap which Kelvin has hidden with his concealment skill. Raj gets stuck and begins to sink. Kelvin attacks with his wind magic and Gimel makes a run for it. However, Clotho blocks his exit and chases him back in. Clotho takes Gimel out with a single hit and binds Raj. Cashel charges at Kelvin but is also easily beaten up. They confess to hunting new players for experience and Kelvin ties them up to turn them in after. Kelvin continues his hunt. He comes across the monster and asks it to join his party. It turns out his name is Gerard and is surprisingly nice, like an old uncle, even giving Kelvin some candy. Gerard explains he was once a human knight but became a black ghost after he died. Before he can agree to join Kelvin, he must first see his strength. They have a duel and Gerard is able to block all of Clotho's attacks. Gerard slashes back at Kelvin, which he barely dodges. As Clotho continues to attack, Kelvin uses his air magic to bind Gerard's movements. Gerard remembers his purpose. He wants revenge on an elf named Gildora who destroyed the kingdom he served and led to the death of his wife and daughter. With this memory, Gerard breaks free from Kelvin's magic and charges at him. Kelvin binds him once again and Clotho fires a huge beam attack at Gerard. The next day Kelvin supplies a piece of Gerard's armor as proof he completed the job. Everyone in the guild is amazed at his accomplishment. This, combined with catching Cashel, leads to Kelvin receiving a special promotion, up to D rank. Gerard joins Clotho and Melfina as Kelvin's newest monster. Kelvin runs into Leo, the guild master. He is shocked when Leo asks if he is from another world. Kelvin realizes Leo's appraisal skill is stronger than his concealment skill, so he can see all his stats and skills. In the guildmaster's room, Kelvin has no choice but to admit to being a summoner. He confronts Leo about why he did nothing about Cashel, and Leo admits he knew Cashel was a murderer, but because he was a noble of the Tristan nation, he needed to get proof, so he is grateful to Kelvin for dealing with him. Getting to the point of the conversation, Leo expresses his desire to become friends with Kelvin, noting he's met otherworlders in the past, such as the heroes of the Holy Empire Doremus. Melfina notes that she was the one who reincarnated them and promises to tell Kelvin more later. Leo continues his explanation about the heroes of Doremus, claiming that the priestess there foretold of the revival of the Demon Lord. The Demon Lord's influence has caused all other monsters to become stronger and more aggressive. Seeing that Kelvin already possesses the skills of an S-ranked adventurer, Leo asks him to protect the town in the stead of the heroes. They come to an agreement after Leo offers him a number of incentives, like increasing his rank and assistance on missions. Afterward, back at the inn, the innkeeper Claire congratulates him for reaching B rank. Enjoying his lunch in his room, Kelvin asks Melfina about the heroes of Doremus. She tells him that 1 year ago the priestess of the Doremus Empire performed a summoning ritual, so she reincarnated other people and had chosen them due to their good looks and knowledge. After hearing this, Kelvin retrieves his reward money from Clotho, whom he has been using for storage. Thanks to his gluttonous ability, he heads off to the alleyway where the slaves are being sold. He tells Gerard he plans to train a slave to become his rear guard to boost his party's strength. Upon reaching the alleyway, there is a man on fire. Kelvin spots the half-elf that he saw from the other day. The slave trader reveals nobody wishes to purchase her because she is cursed and will burn anyone that touches her. With his appraisal skill, Kelvin sees that she is cursed by the Fire Dragon King. He learns from Melfina that the only way to remove this would be an A-ranked white magic spell called Sacred Bless. Kelvin leaves as the elf watches him. Later, Kelvin returns and offers to buy the elf. The slave trader is confused why he would want a cursed slave, but he gives in when Kelvin hands him a bag of gold. As they head back to the inn, the elf introduces herself as Aphil, and thanks Kelvin for buying her. When Kelvin approaches her, she backs away, scared to hurt him with her curse. Kelvin casts Sacred Bless on her and breaks the curse. Finally being able to touch someone for the first time, Aphil breaks down and cries in gratitude to Kelvin. They return to the inn and Aphil is taken under the wing of Claire. Aphil is dressed up in a maid's outfit and they enjoy dinner together. After that, Kelvin reveals his secrets to her, telling her that he is a summoner and introducing her to Gerard and Clotho. He helps her with allocating her skill points and lets her choose to let her learn to make her own decisions. At night, however, they are forced to share a bed, causing Kelvin to experience a sleepless night. 1 month later, Aphil has become a deadly archer. By combining the Dragon King's blessing in archery, she has created her own original skill. At the guild, Angie, the guild secretary, congratulates them on another successful mission. Angie has become friends with Aphil and tells her about a new dessert cafe in town. They decide to go check it out and Aphil invites Kelvin to join them. The next day, the three meet up and Kelvin is stunned by how cute Aphil looks. They head to the cafe and Kelvin becomes embarrassed when Aphil tries to feed him. Everyone watches them, jealous that Kelvin is on a date with 2 girls. Suddenly their table is knocked over. The third prince of Tristan, Tibura, and his 2 guards interrupt. The prince arrogantly sends his guards to grab Angie and Aphil, so Kelvin beats them up and sends them flying. Kelvin binds him with his magic and forces him to explain his business. Tibura admits he came to hire a rumored strong adventurer to boost his poor reputation. Kelvin reveals he is the adventurer and refuses Tibura's offer. Meanwhile, Melfina visits the Temple of Doremus. She appears before Colette the Oracle, who shows her how the heroes have been progressing. Melfina imparts a prophecy, ordering the heroes to deal with an evil in the west and to stay away from Parth, where Kelvin is staying. Melfina leaves just as the heroes arrive and Colette informs them of their new mission. Back at the inn, Ephiel asks if Kelvin finds her attractive. Kelvin becomes flustered and Ephiel tells him she loves him. Kelvin reassures her but resists his desire as she is still a slave and he feels he would be taking advantage. The next day, Melfina shows Kelvin the stats of the heroes of Doremus. Kelvin is not impressed, seeing that they are only around level 50 after a whole year. Melfina is also disappointed in them and sees that Kelvin has already almost surpassed them. Claire interrupts, telling them that the guild has called for them. Kelvin meets with Leo, who tells him that a sealed demon was discovered in a hidden room of a dungeon. Melfina tells him that demons are among the most powerful beings in this world. Leo mentions the trouble he caused by attacking the Tryson Prince and Kelvin quickly accepts the mission. Kelvin and his party head into the dungeon. They head through the cave and come to the hidden room. As they enter, they find the sealed demon, but there is a second demon who introduces itself as Victor, the archdemon. Kelvin asks about the sealed demon and Victor reveals she is the daughter of the most recently defeated demon lord. She was sealed by a magic that only a human can break. Victor hopes that by eating Kelvin he will gain the human ability to break the seal and then he will eat the girl to become the next demon lord himself. Victor blocks the exit and charges at them, which Gerard manages to block. Kelvin tries to restrain his movements but Victor easily breaks free. Kelvin gets excited to face such a strong opponent. Victor levels the playing field, summoning skeletons with his black magic. The skeletons attack but Kelvin and his party are able to defend themselves and easily able to take them out. Victor admires their teamwork. He punches the ground and creates a smoke screen, however Kelvin tracks him with his magic, predicting his next move. Victor attacks from underground but Gerard blocks the hit thanks to Kelvin's warning. An arm tries to grab Kelvin but he manages to dodge it. Victor overpowers Gerard and blasts him away. Victor continues to attack Kelvin with his arm and closes in on him. Kelvin calls for Clotho, who attaches itself on Victor's arm and begins to absorb his magic. While he is distracted, Kelvin casts his binding spell and seals one of Victor's arms. Victor tries to free himself, while Kelvin buffs Gerard's sword with his Vortex Edge spell. Victor tries to counterattack with his other arm but Ephiel emerges from stealth and fires a blazing arrow. Victor blocks the arrow, sacrificing his arm and Gerard slashes and severs the other. Victor doesn't give up. He covers himself with a black smoke and begins to transform. The trio tries to attack before he completes his transformation, but they are too late. With his new form, Victor dashes to attack. Gerard manages to block him and even push him back. He continues his attack but gets knocked down by Victor. Ephiel provides support with her arrows and Kelvin summons Clotho, who spews tons of cursed weapons down on him. All of Kelvin's failures from blacksmithing. Kelvin, Ephiel and Clotho all attack with their strongest moves, combining together and devastating Victor. He's sent flying and a stone pillar breaks and falls towards Sarah. Victor protects her with the last of his strength and falls. Kelvin asks why he protected her. Victor admits he was never going to eat Sarah. In reality, Victor was Sarah's caretaker. He taught her how to fight and was her only companion. However, one day, they were attacked by the Empire's hero and before he died, to keep her safe, Sarah's father sealed her away and told Victor to watch over her. Victor had planned to revive Sarah in a weaker era where she could have ruled as the Demon King. As his dying request, Victor asks Kelvin to add Sarah to his party so she can finally see the world. Kelvin agrees and Victor dies peacefully. Despite the risk she will become the next Demon King, Kelvin breaks her seal. Sarah wakes up aware of her situation and cries for Victor. Kelvin reports his success to the other adventurers and pretends Sarah was one of Victor's victims. With her magic hairband, she is able to hide her wings and horns. Gerard evolves into an Abyssal Knight Commander, an S-ranked monster, gaining a massive buff to his stats. Sarah worries about joining the team but Kelvin assures her with his S-ranked concealment skill, no one will find out she is the daughter of the Demon Lord. The team heads back to town and Sarah is amazed and excited by everything around. She had always been alone and this is her first time in a town. Later, Kelvin checks in with Leo at the guild, who promotes him to A rank for defeating Victor. When he gets back to the inn, there is a surprise party to celebrate his promotion. They have a crazy night and everyone ends up passed out drunk. Outside, Sarah mourns for Victor, who was her only childhood companion. She decides to experience the entire world in Victor's memory, in particular, to see the ocean and learn to swim like Victor once promised her. Sometime after, Kelvin and Ephiel's crafting skills reach S rank and the party gets new gear. Sarah gets a new outfit and gauntlets created from Victor's carapace, and Gerard gets a new demonic sword called the Dainsleif. Kelvin gets tired after all the crafting and Ephiel offers to make him some food. He asks for rice, but Ephiel doesn't know what that is. Kelvin goes mad craving rice, which he hasn't been able to eat since coming to this world. The party heads off to the coastal city Torich, where rice can be found and Sarah can see more of the world. Gerard reports that Melfina is missing. She had told Kelvin that since he can't summon her, she left to try and possess one of her proxies, so she could join them in the physical world. Gerard suspects Melfina is jealous of the two ladies in the party. Along their journey, their carriage is stopped by a woman and a gang of bandits appear. They boast about being the infamous gang known as Black Wind. Kelvin checks their stats and sees that they are only around level 30. He tells Sarah to deal with them and tells her not to use her new gauntlets. Sarah sends a bandit flying and is surprised he was so weak. One of the bandits attacks with his giant hammer, but Sarah effortlessly stops him and pushes him away. Sarah ties them all up, but the woman boasts about their boss who is level 70, causing Kelvin to be interested and interrogate her. The group makes it to Torich, and Sarah is amazed at the sight of the ocean, remembering her promise with Victor to swim. Kelvin agrees to teach her, but first they head to the guild and turn in the bandits. Kelvin meets with Mist, the guild master in Torich. She has heard all about Kelvin from Leo, who she used to be in a party with. Kelvin informs Mist that the boss of Black Wind is actually the champion of Tryson named Kristoff. He pretended to destroy the gang but instead took over it from the shadows and is involved with illegal slave trading. Kristoff is in town, but they can't accuse him without solid proof. Kelvin is actually not too interested because Kristoff is only level 70 and poses no challenge. Suddenly, Kelvin detects the presence of the Empire's heroes and suggests that they can handle the bandits. With this suggestion, Mist requests the heroes to investigate the bandit hideout. Wanting to help the people, they accept the request. However, Kelvin has something planned. At the bandit hideout, there is a room of kidnapped women. One of the bandits enters. He tries to grab one of the girls, but Kelvin arrives and Gerard knocks him out. Meanwhile, Kristoff and his lieutenants discuss the loss of one of their squads. There is a knock at the door and Kelvin's party bursts in. Kristoff wants to get even for his friends. However, Kelvin is not there to fight them. He quickly ends things with Kristoff to prepare for the main event. The heroes arrive at the hideout. They find it strange that it's empty. They come across Clotho and try to fight it, but one of the slaves protect it, saying it belongs to their savior. They introduce themselves as the heroes of Doremus. Upon hearing this, all the slaves are relieved. One of the heroes is also a summoner and is able to talk to Clotho. He tells her he was left to protect the slaves. One of the slaves urged the heroes to help Kelvin with the bandits. The heroes rush on ahead and find the defeated Kristoff and his lieutenants on the floor, thinking that they were the adventurers who had saved the slaves. Kelvin and his party pretend to be bandits and are confronted by the four heroes of the Empire: Toya, Setsuna, Mizoka, and Miyabi. Kelvin taunts the heroes and challenges them to a game. He offers to fight them all by himself, with the loser forced to obey an order from the winner. Toya doesn't want to fight in such a dishonorable way, but Setsuna cautions him and convinces him to fight together. They all agree and accept Kelvin's game. While the heroes plan, Ephiel reveals Kelvin's plan to order the heroes to act as witnesses to Kristoff's involvement with the bandits and get around his protection from Tryson. Gerard comments on how Kelvin is such a battle junkie, pretending to be bandits just to fight with the heroes. Ephiel is worried for him and tells him not to underestimate them, just because they are lower level than him. Kelvin is however keen to test his abilities and his new skill Eater Gloves. The heroes begin their attack by first summoning their spirits to boost their power. Toya charges in, but Kelvin counters with a blast of magic. While the heroes defend against the attack, Kelvin dashes past and approaches Mizoka. However, she calls out her dragon who breathes fire at Kelvin. Kelvin enhances his speed and manages to dodge the flames. He appears behind Miyabi and uses his skill Eater Glove to steal her skill. Sarah explains that each glove can copy one skill at a time and that she also let Kelvin borrow one of her skills. With this, Kelvin steals Miyabi's unique skill, Parallel Processing. Toya rushes to help, but Kelvin dodges his strikes. Setsuna and Mizoka heal Miyabi while Toya continues to fight on his own, believing he has the advantage in close quarters. However, Kelvin fights back thanks to borrowing Sarah's S-ranked fighter skill. He overwhelms Toya, but Setsuna comes to his aid. Kelvin dodges her slash and summons a giant wall to defend himself. Setsuna uses her unique ability to cut through anything to destroy the wall with a single slash. But as the wall disappears, Kelvin lunges toward her. He fires an enormous fireball at her, but Toya manages to get him in the way and block the attack. Mizoka tries to heal him, but Toya claims he is okay, proclaiming that this is nothing if he is to defeat the Demon Lord one day, but Setsuna slaps him. She is mad he sacrificed himself and tells him he needs to cherish himself more and rely on his team. Mizoka and Miyabi both agree and Toya apologizes, and they agree to fight as a team again. As Kelvin prepares to continue their fight, a spirit appears and explodes with a blinding light. Mizoka uses her frost spell to freeze him in place, and Miyabi uses her gravity magic to further restrict his movements. With Kelvin locked in place, Toya and Setsuna charge at him, but Kelvin uses his detonation spell, causing a huge explosion around him. Toya and Setsuna are caught by the explosion, but both manage to survive thanks to protection from their spirits. As the smoke clears, Kelvin applauds their attempt. The heroes are shocked he is completely unharmed from the explosion. Kelvin criticizes their amateur approach and even gives them hints on how to improve. He calls out Toya for not using his unique skill. Realizing he can't hide it, Toya reveals the true form of his sword, splitting into two swords, allowing him to dual wield. He rushes at Kelvin once again but is backed up by his team. Mizoka uses her ultimate spell, Frozen Temple, which creates a massive pillar of ice and completely binds Kelvin. Miyabi summons her strongest minion, the Grave Ogre. Sarah taunts Kelvin from the sidelines, offering to rescue him, which he declines. Miyabi then attacks with a blast of dark energy, but Kelvin calls forth some golems to absorb the attack. He orders them to buy him 30 seconds and begins to create a new spell to free himself from his predicament. Normally new spells can take days to create, but thanks to the parallel processing he stole, he can speed up the process. Mizoka warns the others about the new spell and Setsuna slashes through the golems. However, Kelvin finishes creating his spell and unleashes a barrage of energy that simultaneously destroys all of the ice, freeing himself. Setsuna lunges at him and slashes, but Kelvin is faster than her and delivers a blow to her stomach. He easily dodges the ogre's attacks with his speed and knocks out Miyabi. Mizoka tries to help, riding on her dragon, but gets blown out of the sky. Toya catches her and becomes enraged. He attacks wildly at Kelvin but ultimately gets knocked out with a single punch. When Toya wakes up, he finds the rest of his team with him. The young slave girl sits on Kelvin's lap with Clotho, and Toya demands that Kelvin let her go. Kelvin tells him to have a better look, and he realizes that the girl is there willingly and that Kelvin was actually the adventurer that saved them. Toya is confused why they didn't just clear up the misunderstanding, but realizes how Kelvin had given them tips to help them improve. He admits defeat and thanks Kelvin, calling him his master. Kelvin reminds him that they promised to obey his order. Toya is prepared for anything, but Kelvin orders them to strip their clothes, causing them all to be embarrassed. He has them all change into swim clothes and takes them to a sea cave to train. The heroes struggle as they fight against a giant octopus. Its skin is too soft and slippery to cut through. Kelvin watches on, unimpressed, yelling out ways to help them improve. Eventually the heroes manage to defeat the octopus and the group have a break for lunch. Kelvin notes how they struggled against the octopus, so they stand no chance against a dungeon boss or the Demon Lord. Kelvin asks what they would do if they come across a monster they cannot defeat. Meanwhile, Sarah has fished up the dungeon boss dragon. Toya says they would retreat to train and prepare, and fight it again once they were stronger. Kelvin is satisfied with this answer and goes to handle the dragon. After that, the heroes take their leave, getting on a ship to the western continent. Kelvin gives them some pendants as a parting gift and they say their goodbyes. As Kelvin watches them sail away, he asks Gerard about the western continent. It's home to the elves that destroyed Gerard's kingdom, and Kelvin asks if they are strong enough to get revenge. Gerard is touched that Kelvin remembers and suggests that they would be able to. Sarah interrupts and mentions that they are being summoned by the Queen of Torridge. They go to the castle, which Kelvin recognizes as looking Japanese. Gerard mentions the first king of Torridge was also said to be from another world. They enter the castle and pay their respects to the queen. She thanks them for resolving the issues with the bandits and for defeating the dragon boss. She offers to reward them, but all Kelvin asks for is to have some of her rice. The queen is amused at the request and grants him a lifetime supply. They have a feast, and Kelvin finally gets to have some rice. The others watch on amused, as Kelvin has his fill of rice. A few days later, Kelvin has been staying at the castle at the request of the queen. Efil brings him his lunch and she has already mastered all of the Japanese dishes. The queen joins him for lunch, saying that Efil makes the best food she has ever had. She tries to convince Kelvin to give Efil to her, but he turns her down. She then attempts to proposition Kelvin to stay in Torridge and take care of her, personally. But he quickly declines and suggests it's time for them to leave. To get back to Parth, the queen lets them use the teleportation gate. Back in the city, Kelvin buys a new house for the party. He even hires 2 of the slaves he freed, Ellie and her daughter Luca, as household servants. At night, Kelvin has trouble getting used to his new bed. He quickly gets up as he senses Melfina's return with her avatar body. She tells him that he can now summon her and that she will win his heart. Kelvin summons her as her angelic presence is revealed. She asks him what he thinks, and he becomes nervous and sees how his past self fell in love with her at first sight. She introduces herself to the rest of the party, finally meeting them all in person. She teases Kelvin, calling herself his first wife. Melfina gives Kelvin a gift for successfully summoning her. She draws a red flower and blesses Kelvin as the goddess of reincarnation. The blessing has 2 effects, the first being protection from any fatal attacks once a month. Sarah is excited to try it out in her next sparring match with Kelvin. And the second effect is the ability to summon heroes. Sarah spars against Melfina, while Gerard and Luca watch. Sarah transforms her arm to a demonic claw, but Melfina counters with her divine spear. The spear is destroyed, but so is Sarah's claw. Meanwhile, Kelvin thinks about summoning a hero but worries it means forcing someone to come to the world against their will. The fight between Sarah and Melfina ends, with both being evenly matched. Gerard asks why they fought so seriously. They tell him that they were fighting over who had the right to sleep with Kelvin. After that, Melfina surprises Kelvin with some chocolate. She asks what's on his mind, and Kelvin shares his worries and asks why heroes are needed in this world. She explains that all demon lords possess 2 special skills. The first is that they can cause anyone to go insane, and the second is that they are invulnerable to all damage. But heroes are an exception to both these skills. Since they come from another world, their magic is different and they are able to kill the demon lord. Kelvin still feels guilty about summoning someone, so Melfina tells him he can just summon people who have died, so it wouldn't feel like kidnapping someone, but more like giving them a second chance. Kelvin feels better about this suggestion and asks if he gets to choose who he summons. Melfina tells him that it's random and that there is no rush to make a decision. Later that night, Kelvin makes up his mind and decides to reincarnate a hero immediately. He casts the summoning spell, spending all his mana to summon the strongest hero possible. There is a strike of lightning and a young girl named Rio is summoned. Kelvin introduces himself and Rio is grateful to be reincarnated. Rio collapses after just being reincarnated. Kelvin wonders if she is really a hero, but Melfina assures him that she is the best. Soon after, Kelvin also collapses, having used up all his mana. When Rio wakes up, we find out she had suffered from a terminal illness. She meets with Kelvin outside, who tells her about his own experience being reincarnated. Rio is grateful for her new healthy body and offers to join Kelvin's party to repay him. Kelvin tells her that people with black hair are rare in this world, so he tells her to pretend to be his younger half-sister. Rio likes the idea and is excited to have an elder brother. Kelvin is bothered by her name, as it reminds him of the Guildmaster Leo. So Rio decides to change her name to Rion. Later that night, Kelvin wakes up and finds that Sarah has snuck onto his bed. He gets grabbed and finds that Melfina is also there. Under the covers, he sees Rion, who also snuck in. He takes a moment and reflects on his new life. The next day, Kelvin takes Rion to a dungeon. Ellie asks why they were brought along and Kelvin tells her that they should level up a bit for their own safety. Luca is scared of the monsters, but Kelvin tells her they don't need to fight. He has an XP sharing skill, so as his party kills the monsters, everyone will level up. They are attacked by Shadow Wolf, but Kelvin easily restrains it with his spell and tames it as a pet dog for Rion. Efil notices the adventurer old and his party approaching. They explain they are here to slay monsters for their promotion exam to rank B. Kelvin introduces his new party members and the adventurers get jealous of how many girls there are and run off. Sarah and Gerard return after seeing Old's party and ask what they were doing. Kelvin tells them they were here for their exam, but Sarah becomes nervous and reveals that they actually already killed all the monsters in the dungeon. Efil uses her Farsight ability to check and there are no monsters left. Kelvin ends up apologizing to Uld, but he is just amazed at how strong Kelvin has become. Excited that Kelvin will be taking the S-rank promotion exam soon. This comes as a shock to Kelvin, not knowing that Leo had put him up for the promotion exam to S-rank. They give the wolf a bath and Rion reveals that she named him Alex. Thanks to one of her skills, she is able to understand him. Over the next few weeks, Rion trains with the other members of the party and bonds with Alex. One night, Sarah detects a number of intruders. There are 14 of them and Kelvin checks their stats, using the Farsight skill he borrowed from Aphil. They are all only around level 20, so Kelvin decides to test Rion. Rion is nervous at first but soon agrees to do it. Kelvin sends a piece of Clotho with him and gives him a new mithril sword. The intruders are former teammates of Kristoff, seeking revenge against Kelvin. Rion fights against the intruders while Kelvin and Sarah watch from afar and assess his skills. Rion defeats all the intruders and celebrates her first victory. While Sarah cleans up the mess, Kelvin confronts the leader of the intruders and captures him. Meanwhile, in the kingdom of Tryson, the Emperor Zell has a meeting with his generals, Prince Asgrad, Tristan, Dan and Princess Shutola. It turns out Kristoff was capturing slaves on Tristan's order. The Emperor is disappointed at the failure and worries this might start a war with the three neighboring kingdoms of Gon, Torich and Duramus, who are forming an alliance against them. Tristan suggests that they go to war, saying that they are stronger than the three kingdoms combined. Prince Asgrad supports the decision to go to war, also believing that they are stronger and wanting to test out his newly acquired pet. General Dan and the princess vote against starting a war, saying that the other nations may not be as weak as they think. With this deadlock, the Emperor decides that his fifth general Clive be the one to have the final vote. A soldier goes to the Magical Knight Order to notify Clive. He is creeped out by the women that stand frozen. He finds a number of women on the floor and he notifies Clive he is being summoned by the Emperor. Clive complains about it being a hassle but gets up, revealing himself. The kingdom of Tryson considers going to war with its neighboring kingdoms, and Kelvin hears from Leo that they've become increasingly aggressive against the Gon kingdom. Coincidentally, Leo gives Kelvin a mission for his promotion to S-rank. It's a request from the King of Gon to kill an S-ranked monster that threatens an elven village. As the party heads to the village, they suspect that Tryson might be involved. Suddenly their carriage is stopped by some elves, and Kelvin explains he's there on a request from the king. The chief of the elves, Nellas, appears and apologizes for their rudeness. He becomes shocked when he sees Aphil, mistaking her for his own daughter, Lumel, but realizes his mistake. Kelvin becomes curious and asks to know more about Lumel. Nellas explains that 20 years ago, they were attacked by the Flame Dragon King, and Lumel offered herself as a sacrifice, becoming his bride to save the village. However, a few years later, Lumel was found dead in the forest, and fearing that the dragon might return, the elves fled to Gon. Sarah suggests that Aphil must be the child of Lumel and the dragon, but Malphina mentions that Aphil's father must be a human, stating how it would be impossible for an elf and a dragon to have a child. Regardless of who her parents are, Aphil is happy with the family she has now. Getting back to the mission, Nellas reveals that they've been attacked 3 times, and elves have been getting kidnapped. Kelvin finds it strange for the monsters to be kidnapping people. He comes up with a plan, and creates a stone barrier around the whole village. A group of Tryson soldiers head towards the village with monsters somehow under their control. They ride on the monsters, boasting about their strength, but suddenly get shot at. They can't tell where they are being attacked from and panic. Aphil shoots from a tower, using her ultra-long-range archery magic. One of the soldiers reports to the commander about the dire situation, saying that their forces are being wiped out by unknown adventurers. They're found by Malphina and Rion, so the commander calls his strongest monster, the S-ranked Gigant Lord. An enormous giant awakens, and Malphina gives Rion the opportunity to fight alone and prove herself. Rion rushes up the giant's arm, but breaks her sword when trying to attack. She gets blown away, but is determined to prove herself. She calls for Clotho, taking out 3 new swords. Using a combination attack with her dog, she triple wields and takes out the giant. As it falls, the commander tells the giant to transform. It erupts with flames, revealing its true form. Sarah is disappointed she doesn't get to fight it, and Kelvin is confident in Rion. Rion is unfazed and attacks with her triple-wielding attack once more and defeats the monster. She celebrates with Malphina, as the commander cries at their defeat. As Kelvin and Aphil watch Rion from afar, they're attacked with a blast of energy, which Kelvin manages to block. General Clive appears before them, and Kelvin realizes he's a strong opponent and begins to get excited. Clive takes a liking to Ephiel and tries to hypnotize her into becoming his slave, but realizing his intentions, Kelvin stops him. He uses his appraisal skill and sees that Clive has a unique skill and must also be from another world. Clive is surprised they are both otherworlders, and Kelvin tells Ephiel to retreat. She turns invisible and heads back to the village while Kelvin transforms the tower, creating 4 obsidian blades. Kelvin sends the blades to attack, but they are easily stopped by Clive's helix barrier. He knocks the blades away, and his knights attack Kelvin from behind. Kelvin notices that they are all under Clive's hypnosis, and Clive gloats about having Kelvin outnumbered, but an attack suddenly pierces through his barrier as Ephiel shoots from below. Kelvin summons 4 golems to wield his blades and sends them to deal with Clive's knights. With the 2 alone, Clive summons his staff to fight Kelvin. They fly through the sky, firing magic at each other, and Clive chases after Kelvin. He fires a barrage of energy which Kelvin dodges, but the attacks land on his knights. Kelvin warns him, but Clive doesn't care, saying he has plenty of replacements. Kelvin ends the chase, and Clive brags about being able to do anything he wants with his powers. Kelvin is annoyed at his arrogance, and the 2 charge at each other. There's a huge clash, resulting in Kelvin's staff getting destroyed, and Clive getting a scar on his face. He freaks out about the scar, and swears to crush Kelvin with his strongest S-ranked spell. He gathers energy, and a deadly hurricane forms around him, sucking up everything nearby. With no other choice, Kelvin takes out his new staff, the S-ranked Black Disaster. He focuses his energy and transforms it into a scythe. He jumps toward Clive and cuts right through his magic, as well as severing both his legs. Before Kelvin can finish him off, he teleports away, getting saved by General Tristan. Tristan admits to being the one behind the attacks on the Elven village, but quickly teleports away. Kelvin is disappointed with the ending of his fight, but the elves celebrate their victory. Melfina, Sarah and Rion have a race back to Kelvin to see who he'll praise. Rion creates a new skill, winning the race, and Kelvin congratulates her on defeating the giant. Meanwhile in Trison, Clive wakes up to being chained up by Tristan. His legs have been healed, but he gets tortured by his own slaves, as Tristan experiments on him as an otherworlder. The elves have a feast to celebrate, but Kelvin watches from afar. Ephiel joins him, and he expresses how lucky he feels to have his companions, deciding to get even stronger to protect them. Ephiel is glad she got to learn more about her mother and even received a hair ornament that belonged to her from Nellis. Kelvin helps her put it on, and the rest of the party come to join them. An elf girl comes up to Kelvin, thanking him for protecting the village, but soon reveals he is the King of Gone, using a special item to change his form and observe him. He congratulates Kelvin and tells him he passed the S-rank promotion. The party congratulates him, and the king reveals there will be a promotion ceremony that includes a mock battle against other S-ranked adventurers. Upon hearing this, Kelvin can only smile, unable to contain himself, excited to fight against other strong adventurers. Unsurprised by his battle-loving nature, the party heads for more adventure. But that's where this story ends. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Imagine visiting your uncle, who has just woken up from a coma after 17 years, only to find him speaking gibberish. Meet Takafumi and his uncle Yosuke. Yosuke claims to have been in an alternate world called Granbamel for the last 17 years. Takafumi stares in disbelief, believing his uncle must be suffering from mental damage. Sensing his disbelief, his uncle tries to prove to him he went to another world by using magic. He chants in a strange language, but nothing happens, much to Takafumi's dismay. Takafumi tries to tell him about his financial struggles and inability to support him, when suddenly his uncle triggers a wind spell while using Japanese, and Takafumi realizes his uncle was telling the truth. Yosuke is a nerd and asks Takafumi about the console wars situation, and how Sega is doing. He becomes distraught when he learns that Sega no longer makes consoles. He immediately writes in his notebook and chants a spell, Akira's Quora. Takafumi asks what Akira's Quora is, and his uncle reveals to him that it's the memory erasure spell, which he uses whenever he experiences something unbearable. However, he writes it down in his notebook before erasing it. Takafumi asks to read the notebook, which he immediately regrets, causing him to break down in tears and ask his uncle to use Akira's Quora on him. A week later, Yosuke gets discharged and moves in with Takafumi. Meanwhile, Takafumi decided to monetize his uncle's powers and started posting videos of it on YouTube, which helped to generate some ad revenue. Later, Yosuke asks Takafumi why he has such a big apartment living alone, to which he replies that he was initially a room share setup, but it didn't work out. His uncle is surprised to hear the term room share, which he has never heard of, but is happy to hear Takafumi found friends to live with. Takafumi asks his uncle about his companions in the other world, to which he informs him he was mostly solo for 17 years. The reason was that everyone in the other world was beautiful, while he was seen as a monster and got hunted down wherever he went. His uncle talks about one particular person who followed him around regularly and harassed him. He saved her life, but rather than saying thanks, she was rude to him. As his uncle continues to talk more about the person, Takafumi realizes that the girl actually liked his uncle but was a tsundere, a concept that didn't exist 17 years ago. His uncle shifts his attention to the comments on his YouTube video, with one commenting on how fake it looked. Yosuke struggles using the internet and dealing with haters for the first time. One day, Yosuke shows interest in buying a turn model cell phone from an auction. Takafumi says it won't work since it uses a 2G signal. His uncle wants to get it anyway. While he is surprised by the innovation of smartphones, he laments about their lack of gimmick. Yosuke mentions how he once innovated an item in the other world and showed his memory using a spell. He had crafted an everlasting pot of water using spell cards for a village suffering from a drought. Takafumi is impressed and thinks the villagers must have sung him praises. But in reality, the villagers had tried to hang him because it was sacrilegious, and they smashed it. While the villagers were trying to hang him, an elf arrives to stop them. While the elf tried to mediate the situation, Yosuke took the chance to escape. Yosuke is able to change the point of view in his memory, showing how he was treated. Takafumi is shocked at how cute the elf is. Suddenly Yosuke gets a notification of the auction on the cell phone closing down soon and orders it in a panic, without checking the shipping cost, which turns out to be 2,000 yen for the item, since someone from an isolated island was selling it. Takafumi laments that if the location was closer, they could have picked it up and saved on the shipping cost. Yosuke suddenly jumps out of the window, to Takafumi's surprise, and flies away, returning from his trip 30 minutes later with the cell phone in hand. He shows it off to Takafumi, who asks him if he could pick up other items to save on shipping costs, which he agrees to. Takafumi receives a package and asks his uncle for something to open the box with. His uncle gives him a short sword which surprises him, and he asks his uncle where it came from. His uncle shows him his storage magic as he pulls his notebook from it. Takafumi asks if his uncle had brought more stuff from the other world. He takes out some rings, which he says are rare enough to trade for a castle. Takafumi gets excited, but his uncle informs him that he had already tried selling it at the pawn shop and it was priced at 50 yen because the materials were so rare, they thought it was just a toy. Takafumi asks whether his uncle wanted to give the ring to someone, to which uncle informs him that it was a trophy for clearing a dungeon. Seeing Takafumi down, Yosuke asks if he wants to talk about love and shares the story of his first love, Sonic and Tails. Yosuke reminisces about visiting the toy store and watching the title screen. Takafumi asks if he ever met any girls in the other world, to which his uncle shows him his memory of saving a girl and her siblings from an orc. While initially thankful, the girl eventually despairs upon seeing his face and decides to sacrifice herself by giving herself up to save her siblings. Having misinterpreted the situation, uncle thought that the girl was happy and thankful to him, but he suddenly blacks out and thinks that some goblins attacked him from behind and threw him into the river. Takafumi notices in the memory that the girl's siblings were making suspicious moves while trying to get behind his uncle, and they were the ones who attacked him. But thanks to the elf, his uncle was saved. The elf proclaims that he is in her debt, so to repay her, he gives her an extremely rare ring. The elf panics and blushes as he puts the ring on her finger but ultimately accepts it. Takafumi is shocked, and realizes the elf thought he was proposing to her. But in the end Yosuke sold the ring to pay off his perceived debt and abandoned the elf in a random town, leading to her following him everywhere for 17 years. Yosuke tells Takafumi to put his sword away, which ends up as inspiration for his next viral YouTube video, getting over 2 million views. A week later, on a rainy day, Yosuke receives a package. It's the final Sega magazine, which he never had the chance to read. Takafumi has no interest, but as his uncle reads the magazine, he finds that the most popular game was a dating sim, while his favorite game Guardian Heroes came in ranked 197th. Yosuke hovers outside in the pouring rain and gets struck by lightning, proclaiming that Guardian Heroes should have won. Once the rain settles, Takafumi tries to console his uncle, telling him that at least an RPG placed second. He then learns that his uncle didn't play RPGs due to his lousy memory surrounding remembering objectives. The mentioning of RPGs jogs Yosuke's memory of a time that reminded him of an RPG encounter he had. He is told about a dragon that threatens to destroy the village, and the way to defeat the dragon is with a special ice sword from the Ice Clan. However, the sword is sealed by a girl named Mabel, and he must cure her broken heart to get the sword. Upon meeting with Mabel, she tells him about a particular flower that her mother once showed her. Yosuke immediately leaves and goes straight to the dragon, slaying it himself without needing the sword. Takafumi notes how he should have retrieved the flowers for Mabel, but his uncle claims it was too hard for him to remember. The village elder is shocked to hear he defeated the dragon without the sword, and Mabel is left to her misery. The doorbell rings, and it's a package delivery containing a Sega Saturn and 20 games. He gives it to his uncle as a gift, and his uncle is shocked. Yosuke is overjoyed, and the two play games together. On New Year's Eve, Takafumi becomes curious about what New Year's was like in the other world. His uncle shows him his memory of a New Year's Eve party that he attended. Everyone was happy and having a wonderful time except for his uncle, who ate alone and returned to his room for the night. Takafumi is disappointed at the memory, and they go play on the Sega Saturn instead. During their game session, Yosuke reveals that Mabel did visit him that night, and Takafumi turns off the game and demands that he see what happened during her visit. Once again, Yosuke shows his memory, and Mabel asks how she could overcome being a coward and be strong like him. Yosuke gives her a motivational speech, but it takes a drastic turn when he learns that she's a recluse and suggests it's okay to stay that way, and okay to be a coward. Mabel offers him the ice sword, but he declines it because it's too cold, and the memory ends. The pair spend the rest of their New Year's Eve eating noodles and discussing games. The next day we meet a woman named Fujimiya. She is creeped out when she sees Yosuke on a bench, talking to himself. As she walks away, she runs into Takafumi. They haven't seen each other since childhood, and they briefly chat. Takafumi invites her over to visit his place, which Fujimiya agrees to but tells him she'll come over after dropping off her groceries. 30 minutes later, Fujimiya arrives and receives a text from Takafumi about how he's out getting snacks, but will be home soon. Fujimiya enters the place, and shortly after, Yosuke arrives, landing on the balcony. Yosuke notices her and charges at her, pinning her down and attempts to erase her memory of what she saw, but Takafumi returns just in time and stops him, explaining that she's his friend. Upon hearing this, Yosuke offers his apology and thanks Fujimiya for being Takafumi's friend. Afterward, Takafumi tries to explain how his uncle can use magic and is a YouTuber. However, Fujimiya believes Yosuke is crazy and is taking advantage of Takafumi's kindness, proclaiming that Yosuke should leave Takafumi's life and live his own. Yosuke deduces that she likes Takafumi. Despite her denying it and Takafumi claiming they're just friends, Yosuke doesn't buy it. Yosuke dashes behind Fujimiya and reads her mind. He finds out she changed her outfit and even showered before coming, causing her to be embarrassed. The doorbell rings and Yosuke goes to answer it. Fujimiya suggests that Takafumi cut ties with his uncle, even offering to help him with rent, which he mistakes as her wanting to be roommates. One day as Takafumi returns home, he finds a confused-looking Fujimiya with the elf from the other world. 75 minutes earlier, Takafumi tells his uncle that Fujimiya will be coming over. He then reads his uncle's email, which his uncle ignored because it was in English and he couldn't read it. Takafumi tells him it's a message from YouTube and warns his uncle he will soon be jobless. YouTube changed the requirement to earn money to having 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 hours of watch time. His uncle's channel has enough watch time but only 812 subscribers. Takafumi sees that his uncle's low subscriber count is due to his uncle's rude replies in the comments, insisting that his magic is real. Being in such a stressful predicament reminds Yosuke about a time in the other world when the defensive barrier of the sealed city broke and 1,000 monsters invaded. After hearing this, Takafumi is dying to know what happened. Yosuke shows his memory. He sees an enormous barrier surrounding the entire city. The residents become alarmed, thinking he is an orc, but the elf is there and says he only looks like an orc, reasoning if he was really an orc, the barrier would have killed him. The elf goes on to explain that the barrier is to ward off mythical beasts in the surrounding area. Yosuke summons his 2 energy swords, which shoot a beam of energy, destroying the barrier. The residents panic as Takafumi is left speechless. He questions why his uncle would do such a thing, only to learn his uncle just wanted to see if he could. With the barrier destroyed, an army of giant cyclops led by a cloud dragon appear outside the city, preparing to invade. The two assess their dire situation and the elf takes out her legendary sword and prepares to fight. Using her magic, she dashes through the sky toward the Cyclops. But the barrier reforms and she crashes into it. It turns out that Yosuke just asked the spirits to repair the broken barrier and they did. The monsters leave, but the residents are suspicious of Yosuke. However, the elf diffuses the situation and in return for not telling everyone it was him that broke the barrier, she asks Yosuke to take her on a date. Takafumi is overjoyed at the result, but Yosuke ends up skipping town. Takafumi is horrified. His uncle fled to avoid being blackmailed by her. Remembering how he asked the spirits for help, Yosuke decides to ask people to subscribe to his YouTube channel. Takafumi thinks it's a bad idea, thinking that the internet trolls will prey on his weakness. However, the opposite occurs, and more people subscribe to the channel, enough for Yosuke to save his channel. Fujimiya arrives and wonders what is going on between the two of them. Afterward, Fujimiya lectures Yosuke about being a burden on Takafumi and how being a YouTuber isn't financially adequate. Yosuke brushes it off, and Fujimiya mentions that Takafumi isn't able to have a girlfriend live with him due to him living there. Hearing this, Yosuke suggests that Fujimiya live with them, but Takafumi refuses that suggestion. He gets a message about a sale, and heads out to the shops. Once Takafumi is gone, Yosuke tries to have a heart-to-heart with Fujimiya about her relationship with Takafumi, but she refuses. Yosuke talks about the romances he's experienced in video games, but Fujimiya rejects the comparison. Yosuke leaves the room and Fujimiya feels bad and goes to apologize to him, only to find the elf in Yosuke's clothes. She introduces herself as Takafumi's aunt. She then tries to continue her heart-to-heart with Fujimiya until Takafumi returns home. Takafumi is surprised at the elf claiming to be his aunt. He figures out that she is his uncle and asks why he didn't change his appearance in the other world. Yosuke tells him it is a forbidden magic as you could lose your own identity. Takafumi comes up with an idea and suggests they shoot a YouTube video about his uncle's transformation magic. Although his uncle refuses at first, Takafumi convinces him after promising to play Guardian Heroes with him, and Fujimiya is left confused. As the video is uploaded to the internet, they decide to watch a memory of Takafumi's past. Fujimiya is shocked at the magic, but Takafumi convinces her it's just a hologram projector. It's a memory of how Fujimiya used to bully him. Fujimiya is horrified to remember she was a bully, instead of the sweet memories she had. She tries to stop them from watching, but in the end they turn out to become friends. The video finishes uploading and they watch it. Takafumi pretends his uncle is a VTuber. Yosuke is horrified that the video contains no footage of the game. However, it's an instant success, getting over 200,000 views. All the comments compliment how cute he looks. Takafumi celebrates as Yosuke gets depressed and reverts back into his true form, and Fujimiya is shocked at the sight. Despite Yosuke's pride getting destroyed, they get to enjoy a nice sushi dinner from the money he made. Watching another one of Takafumi's memories, he gets bullied by two boys, but they end up getting bullied by Fujimiya, which leads to Takafumi admiring her. However, Fujimiya gets depressed seeing this. Fujimiya admits she was a brat but shows how she became more feminine in middle school. Fujimiya notices her coffee tasting especially nice, and Takafumi tells her he bought a coffee grinder and beans with the money his uncle gave him for his birthday. Thinking about giving Takafumi a gift, Fujimiya sends him a photo of herself in a swimsuit from middle school, hoping to entice him. However, Takafumi immediately tries to delete it, not wanting a picture of an underage girl on his phone, and Fujimiya is devastated. Takafumi gets an alert for a sale on coffee beans and heads out to buy them. Fujimiya has an outburst from the rejection and causes Yosuke to spill his coffee. He reflexively casts ice magic, freezing the coffee but also Fujimiya. Yosuke thaws her out and Fujimiya is left drenched. Yosuke tells her to take her shower and he steps out and leaves some of Takafumi's clothes for her to wear as hers dry off. After Fujimiya is done with her shower, she puts on Takafumi's top, but then Takafumi walks in on her. A stare-off between the two occurs, and Fujimiya then shrieks in embarrassment, causing Takafumi to quickly leave while apologizing. However, Fujimiya hopes that Takafumi is enticed after seeing her like that, but he is so dense he apologizes and tells her he will take responsibility, which confuses Fujimiya. Takafumi calls Yosuke home and tells him to erase his memory. Fujimiya stops him, saying that she didn't mind, and to her dismay, Takafumi thanks her for being such a considerate and thoughtful friend. A week later, Fujimiya reveals it's her 20th birthday. Yosuke shares his life philosophy, telling her you should never give up because things can change in an instant. Fujimiya is impressed by his wise words and Yosuke shows them his memory of his 20th birthday. He is approached by the elf and she joins him. She confronts him about the barrier he broke and, as a bribe, offers her some food to keep her mouth shut about the barrier. The elf then changes the subject concerning how strong he is, remembering how he once saved her from a deadly venom dragon, but he brushes it off as hard work and training. The elf asks if this is how he seduces women and Yosuke also mentions how he killed the blaze dragon. The elf is shocked, especially after learning he killed it without the ice sword. She doesn't believe him but he shows proof, showing her the fire of the blaze dragon. Yosuke explains how his achievements are possible because he never gives up as he repeats his life philosophy. He reveals to the elf that he had learned it from a game strategy guide. Takafumi and Fujimiya are speechless at the revelation, and Yosuke then goes to play some games. The memory continues. Yosuke invites the elf back to his inn. The elf is reluctant but he grabs her arm, shocking Takafumi and Fujimiya. The elf ends up going along with him, and as the two continue their way back to the inn, Yosuke thanks the elf for supporting him through the tough times. She is shocked to learn how much she means to him. They make it back to the inn and the elf tells him she would support him forever. However, he tells her it's not necessary and just thanks her for supporting him back to his room. He locks her out and immediately goes to sleep. The next morning, the elf confronts him and demands to know his plans for the day. Takafumi is amazed at her resilience, but Fujimiya notices her eyes and realizes she's spent the night crying. After seeing this, Fujimiya can't help but take a drink and forces Yosuke to drink as well. Yosuke stumbles and becomes drunk instantly, and Fujimiya tries to bail but Takafumi stops her. Yosuke decides to take her home. He uses a wind spell, causing a huge gust of wind, and the three of them end up high in the sky. Fujimiya suggests that Yosuke become a pro baseball player to make money. She says that he could use his magic to pitch ultra-fast balls. However, Yosuke claims that in his youth, he was looked down upon by the baseball team in his class, but he still respected them as they earnestly practiced daily. So for him, to cheat using magic would be against his morals. Yosuke goes on to talk about how dangerous the terms in baseball sound, like dead ball and stealing bases. It reminds him of a time he was almost assassinated. He then shows the memory in question, where he tirelessly wanders through a forest after completing a dungeon. A person is shown close behind him and is revealed to be Mabel from the Ice Clan. She freezes Yosuke's legs in place and tackles him to the ground. Recognizing Mabel, Yosuke asks why she's there. Mabel sarcastically answers that she was relieved of her duties because he killed the dragon without using the ice sword. Not understanding that she was being sarcastic, Yosuke says he is happy for her. Although Yosuke was at her mercy, Mabel asks why he didn't defend himself. Yosuke says that he knows she has no intention of killing him. He then asks her if she's been eating properly, causing Mabel to whimper and cry and pass out onto Yosuke's lap. He then drags Mabel to his room at an inn and places her on his bed. After Mabel wakes up, Yosuke gives her a loaf of bread and asks why she didn't become a hermit in her village. Mabel says that since she was no longer needed, her tree home was cut down for firewood and that she was given an ultimatum of either becoming the village pet or leaving. So she ended up freezing all of the villagers' feet, dripped icy cold water on their necks, and then fled. Shocked by Mabel's tenacity, Yosuke asks Mabel if she really doesn't like working, to which she mentions a few possible work interests of hers, but notes that they're all too labor-demanding. Yosuke relates to her predicament, but notes that he makes his living as an adventurer. He suggests that she could also make a living as an adventurer using the ice sword. Despite her hesitance in doing so, Yosuke convinces Mabel, claiming she should live her life the way she chooses. Elated by the suggestion, Mabel claims she'd still need to break the seal on the sword, which is linked to her heart, but believes that becoming an adventurer would fix her gloomy personality. However, Yosuke claims there's nothing wrong with being an introvert. The ice sword starts to crack and Yosuke continues to compliment her, causing her to blush and the sword to crack even further. Yosuke then points out the ring he gave Mabel when she was asleep, saying that it is enough to provide for the rest of her life. Mabel misunderstands his intentions and her sword completely melts. She tries to turn him down but Yosuke insists. She becomes flustered and Yosuke suggests it's getting late and she should stay the night. Mabel asks to first have a bath but Yosuke sniffs her and says that she doesn't smell bad. He mentions once she sells the ring, she will be able to afford the bath fee. Yosuke clarifies, once she sells the ring, she will never have to worry about money again. Realizing the misunderstanding, her sword is immediately frozen once again and she tries to attack Yosuke. The elf comes to see what the commotion is, only to find Mabel restrained and Yosuke holding her down. Seeing this, the elf releases Mabel from her bindings, and she then freezes Yosuke in place, and bonds with the elf. The elf says how traumatizing it must be to wake up married to an orc, but Mabel seems to not mind. She goes on to reveal that the people of the Ice Clan share blood with those from another world. She explains the history of the Ice Clan's founding when a samurai from an alternate world was sent there 400 years ago. The samurai asked the god who reincarnated him to give him a sword capable of slaying a god. However, the elf interrupts because she already knows the story, having read it from a book. Mabel is devastated the elf ruined her story and begins to cry. Telling the story was one of the few things Mabel knew how to do, and she breaks down after it was ruined. The elf apologizes and tries to console her. Yosuke is outraged that he never got a special bonus like a god-slaying sword. Takafumi suggests they look back to the moment when he first was transported to the other world. Yosuke rewinds through his memories and finds the moment he was resurrected. He runs into some men who beat him, thinking he is an orc. Fujimiya hears a voice interpreted as God, and Takafumi uses his translation app to translate what God was saying. It says that it would grant him an ability of his choice, and Yosuke, at that time, wanted to be able to understand and communicate with the people of that world, thinking that if he could communicate, they wouldn't treat him like a monster. However, he is instead captured and sold to a freak show as a rare talking orc. He was sold for 3 bronze coins, which turns out to be nothing, as some other trash they had sells for 120 bronze. This revelation shocks both Takafumi and Fujimiya about how dirt cheap he was. Watching this memory, Yosuke and Takafumi both get nosebleeds. It's then revealed that Yosuke had wiped his memory of this event and Takafumi had his memory erased after reading about it in his uncle's diary. The memory continues and Yosuke is locked away in a prison with other animals. They skip ahead about a week because the slave trader forgot about him. Takafumi and Fujimiya think he's gone mad, talking to himself. But actually Yosuke talked to the ray of moonlight that shone through a crack in the ceiling about the Sega game called Pulseman. It turns out that the ray of light was actually Killide, the spirit of light. It teaches Yosuke and grants him his first spell, the Sword of Light. He uses the sword to escape the prison and Fujimiya realizes that it was Yosuke's language translation ability that allowed him to communicate with the spirits. This revelation is also a surprise to Yosuke, who thought his magic ability had come from his ability to adapt thanks to playing video games. In the memory, he goes on to free the other captive monsters and then escape. One of the rabbits follows him and Takafumi wonders if he kept it as a pet, but it turns out to be feral and attacks him. All the monsters turn feral and attack both him and the slave trader. Not wanting to live as an ordinary commoner, Yosuke fights back with his newly acquired light magic and saves the slave trader and himself. Although the slave trader is initially thankful, he becomes terrified by the bloody and crazed-looking Yosuke, who then used his magic to transfer him to a safe location. Throughout the night, Yosuke continued to kill all the monsters and in the morning he cooked them up and ate them. Yosuke notes how this was a good start to his journey in the other world, shocking both Fujimiya and Takafumi. It starts getting late and Fujimiya decides she should get home for dinner. Yosuke agrees they should have a break, mentioning how things just got worse after that, revealing the time when he saved the elf from a dragon. Not wanting to miss the story, Fujimiya tells her family to have dinner without her. Yosuke shows his memory of saving the elf from a venom dragon. He is able to kill it with a single blow, and Fujimiya becomes saddened that she skipped dinner only to see this. Yosuke explains that he merely attacked the spot that the elf had already weakened. As the memory continues, Yosuke gives the elf his hoodie but she pulls a knife out thinking he is an orc. However, she comes to her senses and puts the knife away, but this leads to a misunderstanding, with Yosuke thinking she stabbed herself. He pulls up the hoodie to inspect her stomach. She calls him a pervert and berates him, marking the start of their troubled relationship. Takafumi and Fujimiya are left speechless and Yosuke mentions how the elf was always troubling him after that, like when he was frozen. Speaking of which, Fujimiya asks what happened after he was frozen. Yosuke shows his memory as he lies in bed, suffering from the aftermath of being frozen. It's revealed that both the elf and Mabel stayed in bed with him during the night. Yosuke and the elf have a moment together, but it's ruined by Mabel, who cries for her mother in her sleep, but it's just about not wanting to work and the elf wakes her up with a karate chop. A flustered Mabel tries to explain her sleep talk concerning not wanting to work. Yosuke reminds her that she can sell the ring he gave her, but Mabel is hesitant to do it, saying that she is inexperienced with bartering. The elf enthusiastically offers to help her sell it, but Mabel decides to hold on to it. Yosuke suggests that the elf can take care of Mabel, and Mabel believes it would mean becoming the elf's pet. Afterward, they all eat breakfast together, and Mabel formally introduces herself to the elf and Yosuke. The elf doesn't share her name and simply refers to herself as Elf and reveals her mission to collect ancient relics. Yosuke introduces himself as Wolfgenblood, shocking Takafumi and Fujimiya with his fake name. He tells them that he is from another country trying to make his way back to his home. Takafumi asks his uncle why he gave them a fake name, and his uncle tells him he didn't want to give his name out to strangers. After that, the elf announced that she'd be heading back to Ikoza, the town she sold her ring at. Yosuke asks her why, but it's clear to Takafumi and Fujimiya that she wants to buy her ring back, feeling threatened by Mabel. Mabel then asks what Yosuke will be doing, and he claims he'll try and checking out a nearby dungeon that a hero was trying to clear. Mabel offers to help him, however, she needs to take a nap first and Yosuke heads off on his own. Yosuke notices how late it's getting and calls it for the day. A starving Fujimiya wishes she had gone home for dinner, so Yosuke treats her and Takafumi to some ramen. In another memory, we see the elf as she wakes up. She tries to grab her necklace with her feet. Yosuke suddenly walks in on her. He asks for his hoodie back, but she refuses, saying that it belongs to her now. Yosuke is determined to get it back, using his magic to restrain her. He starts taking it off her, but struggles because the magic is getting in the way. The elf suggests he can undo the spell to make it easier on himself, and he foolishly agrees. But after he undoes the spell, the elf attacks him. Yosuke is completely knocked out, and the elf feels bad. She quickly patches him up, and leaves him in the room. Yosuke mentions how messed up this was, and Takafumi can only agree, but he thinks that his uncle should have just let her have the hoodie. Yosuke says that the elf always took his stuff and never returned anything, and the only thing he ever got was her dress, which they end up getting Fujimiya to try on. Seeing her in the dress, Yosuke finds himself actually missing the elf. Afterward, Yosuke announces that the official name of his language translation skill would be Wild Talker, a name that Takafumi suggested. Fujimiya suddenly notices the time and has to leave, saying she has some college work to do. Takafumi watches his uncle play Golden Axe, and his uncle shows him how he can get the enemy to walk to their own death. He says that his gaming saved the day in the other world, and he brings up his memory of when he worked with some other adventurers. The adventurers are shown attacking him, and he skips ahead to after overpowering them, and explains he is not a goblin. The group's healer, Alicia, then recognizes Yosuke as the person everyone else mistook for an orc during the winter festival. Her companions are introduced as Raiga and Edgar. Despite their hesitation, Alicia asks Yosuke to help them protect a village from a goblin invasion, and he immediately agrees to help. A horde of goblin approaches, but Yosuke tells the others he has a plan. He taunts the goblins, and they rush at him and start beating him up. Takafumi is not impressed, and Yosuke says his plan to lure them into a pit didn't work for some reason. He then goes to use the jump attack he learned from his game. He attempts to move against the goblins, but he misses every time. In the end, he destroys a mountain, which crushes all the goblins, and he thanks his game for giving him the moves to defeat the goblins. Takafumi points out that the moves from the game didn't help at all, but Yosuke is on copium and insists they saved him. After that, the group heads back to the town for their reward. Yosuke finally seems to have made friends, but along the way, Alicia mentions how she saw him rebuild the barrier in the sealed city. Hearing this, Yosuke erases her memory, along with Edgar and Raiga's memories. Despite this, Yosuke would go on to meet them again, and after fighting them once again, clearing up the misunderstanding that he's not an orc, they tell him that they are after a giant hedgehog that has been attacking a nearby village. Hearing this, he imagines Sonic, and proclaims that they should try to communicate with the monster and try to find a peaceful solution. The hedgehog appears, and he becomes disappointed, seeing that it looks nothing like Sonic. He talks with it using his ability. He tries to reason with it, but finds that it just enjoys killing humans for fun, and Yosuke completely incinerates it, leaving nothing but ash. Suddenly a phone rings, and Takafumi sees that Fujimiya left her phone. Takafumi convinces his uncle to help him return the phone, and they fly to her location. When they get there, they see that she is with a shady-looking man. Yosuke lends his powers to Takafumi just in case, and he approaches her and returns her phone. The man becomes apprehensive, but Takafumi realizes he is actually Chiaki, Fujimiya's younger brother, and he is overjoyed to see him after so many years. Yosuke joins them, and Fujimiya introduces him to her brother as a YouTuber, but Chiaki has no clue who he is. As Yosuke explains what he does on YouTube, Takafumi reveals to Fujimiya how he was prepared to protect her. Fujimiya asks what he would have done if Chiaki was a shady guy, and Takafumi reveals the powers he borrowed from his uncle. He turns them both invisible, leaving doubles of them behind, and flying up to a higher location. Fujimiya is surprised he can use the magic so well. They head into an empty classroom, and Fujimiya says that this was just like in school, when he stepped in when she was getting ganged up on. Takafumi can't quite remember, so he plays the memory in question. But it turns out that Fujimiya was actually the one that was picking on the group of kids, and Takafumi misread the situation, and thought she was getting ganged up on. Despite this, Fujimiya was still flattered by Takafumi's good intentions. A girl suddenly walks in on them shocked. She is Fujimiya's friend, Sawa, and Takafumi introduces himself to her. They get along well, and Fujimiya gets a bit jealous of them. They get back to Takafumi's home, and Yosuke continues on with his memory. He asks the trio if they have heard about the hero that's around. Alicia borrows Edgar's sword and reveals that she is the hero, known as the Shining Crusader. She damages the sword, and immediately bows down, apologizing to Edgar. Fujimiya is shocked to see that this is the legendary hero party. When Yosuke looks at Alicia's memory, he sees that they took credit for stopping the goblin invasion, although they have no memory of it. Alicia once again asks him if he was the one who repaired the barrier in the sealed city, causing him to be on alert, but she retracts it, claiming she understands his desire to keep a low profile and promises to keep his secret. Yosuke and the hero party travel together and reach the Labyrinth of Darkness and a ranked dungeon. Upon entering the dungeon, Yosuke immediately casts a spell that reveals a secret shortcut. At the end of the passage, they find the dungeon's treasure, the Wand of Salvation, but the party is completely underwhelmed with how easy they got it. Yosuke realizes what he did, and he wipes their memories. He drags them back outside, and make them go through the dungeon properly, and actually earn the wand. Takafumi is glad that things turned out well, but Yosuke wants to erase their memories again, make them forget that he helped them, but Alicia is overjoyed, saying this is a memory she will never forget, and Yosuke decides not to wipe their memories. Before leaving for the capital, Yosuke receives 3 healing charms from Alicia as thanks for his help conquering the dungeon. When the memory ends, Takafumi and Fujimiya praise Yosuke for handling the situation with a calm and cool head. But Yosuke says he learned to keep cool thanks to his video games. Takafumi wonders what happened after his uncle went to the capital, so his uncle continues the memory. We see him confronting a group of soldiers, and he uses his magic to read the commander's mind. He learns who was behind making Alicia a hero. He vanishes and heads toward the capital. We see a meeting between the commander-in-chief Ricardo and a high priest. We learn that the hero party was meant to be a martyr, create a crisis, and boost their military funding. Yosuke appears, reading Ricardo's mind. The commander defends his actions, claiming that the hero party knew what they signed up to become adventurers. But because of his timid attitude, Yosuke couldn't argue against Ricardo's logic and gets surrounded by soldiers. In this predicament, Yosuke transforms into the greatest monster he could think of, turning into his middle school homeroom teacher. He tells Takafumi that his teacher was the best debater he ever knew. But in this form, he just ends up slapping Ricardo into submission. He slaps him repeatedly. When Ricardo's aide tries to defend him, he slaps her as well, and they both concede to him. Ricardo explains that the world has been unstable, with strange things occurring, the Blaze Dragon being slain, the sealed city barrier being broken. Realizing he was the one behind these events, he couldn't bring himself to continue slapping them. There is a sudden blast of energy, and Mabel appears. Yosuke returns to his original form, and her power instantly melts. An epic battle between the two occurs, but in reality, it's an illusion created by ice magic, and they are really just watching from the sidelines. Yosuke asks what she is doing here, and Mabel reveals that she became a knight of the kingdom. She has grown an ego after getting a job. She tells him he should join her. She tells him to throw the fight, so she can get a pay raise, and make him her underling, but Yosuke can't accept losing to her. The soldiers see them for real. After their illusion became too ridiculous, the commander suggests that Mabel is in cahoots with Yosuke. Mabel starts fighting him for real, even wounding some soldiers, as Yosuke dodges her attacks. Yosuke unleashes his energy sword, and using his speed, he shatters her ice. Mabel comes to her senses, and it turns out she was being mind-controlled by the high priest. Yosuke condemns Ricardo for working with a man that uses such tactics. Ricardo worries how they will be able to protect the kingdom, but Yosuke vows to protect them from any crisis that arises, transforming into the Blaze Dragon to show his strength, and he flies away. Takafumi and Fujimiya are amazed at how cool he was, but he reminds them it was all thanks to his games. Sometime after that, Mabel is devastated. She loses her position as a knight of the kingdom. With the memory over, Takafumi has somehow grown scales all over his body. He thinks back to when he borrowed his uncle's power, and says he used the spells with shortened incantations. His uncle tells him that the shortened incantations are like being rude and demanding to the spirits, so this is a punishment for that. Fujimiya panics seeing Takafumi transforming, but Yosuke tells her not to worry, and ends up transforming himself as well, so Takafumi isn't alone. They both turn into dinosaurs, and Fujimiya is left stunned. There is a major heat wave across Japan, and Takafumi and Yosuke are feeling its effects. When Yosuke tries to play on his Sega Saturn, it fails to boot, and he starts having a meltdown. Fujimiya comes over, and wonders why Yosuke doesn't just use some magic to cool the place down. Yosuke immediately casts his ice magic, blasting the room with an icy breeze, and they thank her for coming up with such a genius idea. Fujimiya wonders what the spirits actually look like, and Takafumi imagines a pair of beautiful fairies. But Yosuke explains that the spirits don't actually have physical forms, but are more like a collection of wills, and he is only able to hear their voices. Yosuke suddenly hears a spirit, and then says that they need to get a cow's head. Takafumi looks it up on his phone, but it would cost 5 million yen. Yosuke explains that the ice spirit he summoned to cool down the room is asking for the head as compensation for its work. It wants them to make an altar and offer the cow's head, or else it will freeze their fields for 10 years. However, it changes its mind, and accepts a fish head as a compromise. An altar is set up, but Yosuke starts craving the fish head, blaming the craving on when they transformed into dinosaurs, and we see how they terrorized Fujimiya. Yosuke warns that it can be dangerous to be transformed for too long, as he pulls up his memory of when he was transformed as the Blaze Dragon. He became trapped in the dragon's thought pattern for a month, and unable to transform back, but eventually the elf found him after following a rumor about his location, and fights him. They have an epic battle, but ultimately, the elf managed to overpower him, and mentally connects with his mind, and helps him revert back to his human form. Afterward, a noble accompanied by an army of soldiers who wanted to deal with the dragon arrives. The elf recognizes him as the head of the Regfalgen family, to whom she owes money. It's also revealed that the elf is a princess, shocking both Takafumi and Fujimiya. The memory continues as Regfalgen demands Yosuke and provokes the elf, prompting her to draw her weapon, but is stopped because of a magical pact that they made. Regfalgen calls the elf foolish for using herself as collateral, but Yosuke wakes up and just destroys the magical restraint. Believing he's repaid the debt to her, he tries to leave, but is held back by the elf. With the pact gone, a giant warrior steps up for Regfalgen, ready to teach the elf a lesson, but before they can fight, Yosuke gives Regfalgen a ring to help pay off the elf's debt. Seeing him give away another ring makes the elf enraged, causing her to shake the ground as she powers up. The ground starts to crumble, and Yosuke grabs onto the elf as the ground below them falls, revealing a swamp. Regfalgen is distraught over the ring stuck on his finger, and just orders his men to retreat. We learn that the reason the elf fell into debt was so she could buy back the ring he had given to her. Seeing they are covered in mud, they head to a nearby hot spring to get cleaned up. Later that day, we see Fujimiya's friend Sawa arrive at the apartment complex, and she is approached by Chiaki. She is creeped out by him, and when Takafumi comes down the stairs, his nonchalant attitude makes Sawa even more nervous. As they walk up the stairs, Chiaki talks about his collection, catching a cutie, and posting a video online, causing Sawa to continue to panic. When they get inside, Sawa warns Fujimiya that Chiaki and Takafumi are scumbags that think of women as collectibles. When she sees the fish head altar in the living room, she freaks out and tries to leave, thinking they are in a cult. However, before she can leave, Yosuke returns, and makes things worse with his creepy smile. Despite this, Fujimiya ends up explaining that it's not a cult, and Yosuke is just a YouTuber. Sawa finds it strange that Fujimiya is hanging out here, but quickly realizes that she has feelings for Takafumi, so she decides to test if Takafumi also has feelings, showing him pictures of the two of them to see his reaction. However, Takafumi becomes more fixated on the random men in the background. Sawa becomes interested to know what Fujimiya was like in elementary school, and Takafumi tells her she looked very similar to her brother Chiaki. Sawa wonders how Chiaki is doing, not recognizing that the shady guy was Chiaki all along. Yosuke decides to just show Sawa what Fujimiya was like back in elementary school, but is immediately stopped by Takafumi. Realizing he revealed his magic, he immediately goes to erase their memories, but gets restrained by Takafumi, while Fujimiya helps the other two escape. After this, Fujimiya scolds Yosuke for always resorting to erasing memories, and this reminds him of a similar situation with the elf at the hot spring. When the two arrive at the hot spring, Yosuke is surprised to see the sign in Japanese. The elf notes that the hot spring's founder also came from another world, but has since passed away. The owner of the inn comes out, explaining that the inn was created using the power of God, but Yosuke just organizes his inventory, treating it as game dialogue that he can't skip, much to Takafumi and Fujimiya's dismay. They end up getting a room at the inn, and Yosuke is annoyed when he finds out he has to share a room with the elf. The owner's daughter offers to prepare him a room of his own, but the elf scares her away. The elf is excited seeing their room, but Yosuke drags his futon away to another room. The elf is shocked at the tiny room, and disappointed she'll be resting alone, but Yosuke suddenly returns and starts giving her a foot massage against her will, thanking her for helping him return from being a dragon. The elf can't handle the massage, but he drags her back, and continues on. However, this gets interrupted when Alicia, Edgar and Raiga are revealed to be eavesdropping. Alicia apologizes to the elf, but ends up flattering her when she thinks that they are a couple, and the elf even shows off her ring. Yosuke asks them what they were doing here, and they tell him that they were training up in the mountains. Alicia thanks him once again for the wand of salvation, and the elf is shocked to see the legendary magic weapon. Raiga tells Yosuke that they were training a new skill and is keen to see it, so he plays Alicia's memory and sees their new skills in action. However, this also reveals a fancy sheath being used as a laundry rack, and upon seeing it, the elf asks where the group found it and immediately heads off to look for it. Yosuke explains that the sheath was actually an ancient magic tool, and the elves have a goal to collect them. The group suddenly notices something burning, and we see that the inn is under attack by a hypno beast. It took control of the owner's daughter and had her open the door. Yosuke tries to use his magic, but there are two birds in the sky that are blocking his magic. He ends up struggling without his magic, but ends up using some magic charms to fight. He uses a wind charm to fly himself up, attacking with a fire charm, and slowing his fall with an ice charm. There is still one bird left, but it gets blasted out of the sky, as we see the elf using her new weapon from the mountain. Seeing that he isn't looking at her, the elf shoots at him to get his attention, but it leads to another one of their misunderstandings. Fujimiya wonders how the bird sealed his magic, and it turns out they have a terrible breath which causes the spirits to be suppressed. When he tries to use his magic, it still doesn't work because the smell is still lingering, so he heads back to Alicia and the others, but finds her being chased by her friends, who have also been hypnotized. He regroups with her and wonders if she can undo the hypnotization with her wand. He grabs it, thinking it might have a secret function like the elf's sword, and the wand flies up into the sky, bursting with light. Two barriers are created, and Alicia becomes flustered with Yosuke on top of her. After she calms down, she uses her magic, syncing her mind with the three of them, and is able to free them from the beast's control. The hypno beast suddenly attacks her, but she dodges, and sends it flying using one of Raiga's techniques. Yosuke reveals that the wand boosted her strength, and when she synced her mind to free the others, she gained their techniques. The beast gets back up and makes a run for it, summoning a bunch of monster hounds in the process. But Yosuke's magic finally returns, as he restrains them all, summoning water serpents, and defeating all of the dogs. Water pours down thanks to his spell, and the rest of the fire is put out. Afterward, Yosuke puts up a barrier around the now exposed bathing area, which actually pleases the owner, because they now can have a lovely mountain view. Everything turns out well, but Fujimiya wonders how this story was related to getting scolded for erasing memories. Yosuke says that after the battle, he had another bath in the hot spring, and he was joined by Alicia. As she gets closer, her skirt gets caught, and she ends up revealing herself, causing him to immediately erase his own memory. Yosuke acts cool, having forgot what he just saw, and Alicia thinks he must have no interest in a little girl like her, but is then shocked to find out that she is actually slightly older than him. Alicia is devastated, but thinks her birthday could be wrong, because she has no memories of before she was 9. Using Yosuke's memory magic, we see that she was found after a goblin attack. She had no memories, and was saved by the guards. She was adopted into the village where Raiga and Edgar lived, and she treasures every memory that they've made. Hearing this, Yosuke feels guilty and admits that he has erased her memories twice. He reveals that he was the one who stopped the goblin invasion, and the time they went through the back door of the dungeon. Alicia realizes that he should have the hero title, remembering how he fixed the barrier in the sealed city, but Yosuke tells her that he was the one that destroyed it in the first place. He explains that he is from another world, and hoped that if he attacked the strongest barrier with his strongest attack, he might create a distortion in space-time to let him go back. Alicia forgives him but tells him not to erase any more memories, saying she doesn't want to forget him. Yosuke concedes, and ends up promising not to erase any memories about her, but Alicia suddenly remembers how he erased his memory after seeing her earlier. Yosuke demands to know what happened, not wanting to break his promise. Although embarrassed, Alicia prepares to recreate the sight, but they suddenly get sniped at, and Yosuke is shocked his barrier was broken. There are more shots fired, and Yosuke makes a run for it, while Alicia is left behind. 1 month later, Yosuke takes on a quest to slay a singing monster. It sings a song about the 3 shrines and trials of the land. Yosuke uses his magic and charges at the beast, but he ends up crashing when he realizes the monster was actually just Mabel. He wonders what she is doing out in the woods, worried she might get attacked by monsters, but Mabel shows off her cloak, which lets her disguise herself as a monster. He starts petting her, but she gets embarrassed. He wonders why she isn't in the capital working as a knight, since he doesn't know she got fired. Mabel pretends that she quit her job to be more free, and explains that she lives in the forest, and put up a scary ice sculpture to scare off anyone that approaches, so she can live here forever. Realizing she is the singing monster, Yosuke prepares to fight her. Mabel is terrified, and immediately agrees to leave. She takes down the ice statue, and she wonders what she is going to do. Yosuke reminds her that she'll be fine, because she can just sell the ring he gave her, but she insists on keeping it. Yosuke suggests she could make money as a bard, but Mabel gets embarrassed, and says she is used to singing alone. Yosuke thinks that since she is cute and can sing, she would have easily become rich as an idol in Japan. Mabel fantasizes about getting rich, but Yosuke thinks about how he can get back to his own world. Hoping to cheer him up, Mabel offers to sing a song from his homeland. Takafumi wonders what song he chose, but it ends up just being the background music from the Sonic the Hedgehog game. He ends up passing out on Mabel's lap, and she keeps singing for him, but there are some knights that plan to ambush them. However, the elf appears, taking the men out, and she glares toward Yosuke on Mabel's lap. Yosuke thinks she is nice for saving them, but Takafumi and Fujimiya can clearly see she is furious. Takafumi asks his uncle about his love for video game music, and his uncle decides to put some on. But when he reads the manual, he finds out he has been mispronouncing the hero's name for the last decade, and he has a meltdown. When Yosuke tries to record a YouTube video as the elf, he can't maintain the appearance, and is still down about his mistake. Fujimiya thinks it's not a big deal getting the name wrong, but he argues that names are important, mentioning the time when the elf told him her real name. The two are shocked to hear this, and insist on seeing the memory. The morning after he met Mabel, the elf confronts him about what he has been up to with Mabel and Alicia. She doesn't like that he keeps calling them by their names when she has known him longer, but he says that she never revealed her name to him. They get into an argument, because she knows that he hasn't told her his real name either, so he suddenly reveals his actual name as Yosuke, making the elf flustered. He asks her for her name, but it turns out to be super long and impossible to remember. Yosuke decides to give her a nickname, calling her Sui. The elf thinks it's disrespectful, and her people would never allow it. But Yosuke wonders if she likes it personally, explaining that Sui means green, just like the color of her eyes, calling them beautiful like jewels. She becomes flustered, and when he calls her Sui, she tells him to only call her that in private. She promises to keep his name secret, because she wants to be the only one that uses it. Mabel joins them, and she wonders what they were doing. Yosuke mentions that he is there to explore the ruins, and Mabel recognizes it as one of the 3 shrines of the land. In Mabel's song, the trial of the shrines is meant for a foreign warrior. They suddenly realizes that it would apply to Yosuke. Yosuke approaches the shrine, and he suddenly blows it up. A godly being emerges, and Yosuke prepares to go all out against it, but Takafumi interrupts, and they wonder why he destroyed the shrine. He says that he was brought to the world by a great power, so he thought that by defeating the power of the shrine, he would get closer to returning back home. Fujimiya thinks that there should have been 3 shrines, but it turns out he already destroyed the other 2 in his previous adventures. The memory continues, as he uses his full power to blast the monster, but it instantly regenerates, and the elf notes that it's a mass of holy magic with no physical body, so regular attacks won't work. Monsters begin to rise from the ground. The elf attacks with her sword, and Mabel uses her ice against the monsters, but they keep on reviving. Yosuke decides to burn them to ash, but as he approaches, he is suddenly mind-controlled, and he unleashes his flames against the 2 girls. The elf jumps to save Mabel, but they end up being protected by the God-freezing sword. They wonder how they should fight Yosuke, but Raiga suddenly appears and sends Yosuke flying. Raiga thinks he took out an orc, and Alicia starts healing the other two. They are there to find the singing monster, but the elf recognizes them, and Raiga realizes it was Yosuke that he punched. The elf tells them they are up against a godly being, and that Yosuke is being mind-controlled. Alicia uses the power of her wand to bring Yosuke back to his senses. She finds herself in Yosuke's memory, but gets rejected, describing his childhood as dark and lonely, with nothing but a box in front of him. They all feel sorry for him, but those were his happiest memories. Yosuke regains control, using his magic to slap himself, waking himself up. He throws up the flame of the blaze dragon, destroying the container, and the dragon begins to revive and absorb the holy monster's power. Since Yosuke couldn't fight something without a physical body, he planned for the dragon to absorb the monster, which he would then defeat. But Alicia wonders how he will defeat it, now that the dragon has gained the regeneration and mind control powers of the holy monster. Yosuke didn't think that far, and realizes that he may have made a mistake. Yosuke suggests using Mabel's God-freezing sword, but Mabel is completely terrified, so it's not going to work. They think they are doomed, but the elf has a plan. She says that they just need to do more damage than it can heal, and mentions that her sword has the ability to absorb and amplify energy. If Yosuke provides his energy, they should have enough to defeat the dragon. Alicia worries about the mind controlling, but the elf reveals the jewel on her forehead protects her from any mental attacks. Alicia approaches Yosuke, and they talk about their last encounter at the hot spring. Yosuke wants to know about the memory that he erased, but Alicia is too embarrassed to tell him. The dragon starts to move, so the elf awkwardly asks Yosuke to carry her to help her fly. Yosuke is not too keen, so he ends up using his chain to carry her. With this, Mabel thinks she won't be needed for the fight, but as she tries to leave, the dragon appears to be targeting her because the Blaze Dragon has a natural grudge against the Ice Clan. Yosuke suggests that she can be the bait to distract the dragon, and she has no choice but to agree. As she charges at the dragon, it throws a boulder at her, but Alicia saves her using one of Edgar's sword skills. As the others distract the dragon, Yosuke can tell that the elf is worried, but she remembers his words from the past about never giving up, so they prepare to face the dragon. Takafumi pauses the memory, as he is in tears that he will finally get to witness a true fantasy battle, something he has been waiting to see since meeting his uncle. Yosuke makes some coffee, and Takafumi prepares some snacks, ready to finally see a battle. The memory continues, as they approach the dragon. It blasts them with its breath, but Yosuke shields them from the attack. He transfers his magic to the elf, and she charges at the dragon. Mabel provides support using her eyes to bind the dragon, and Yosuke unleashes his lightning to charge up the elf's sword. She creates an enormous blade of energy, slashing down onto the dragon and defeating it. The elf faints and starts to fall, but Yosuke rushes to her and catches her. She tries to confess her feelings to him, but he can't hear her. He carries her as they descend, but he smells a burnt smell on her and starts to sniff her, causing her to struggle, and they end up crashing down. Yosuke collects the flame of the holy Blaze Dragon, and the elf warns him about keeping it. The others come rushing over, and Mabel asks to be praised for her efforts. Yosuke thanks them all for their help, saying he would have struggled without them. He especially praises Mabel, and it seems she wants to be carried, just like how he carried the elf. Yosuke thinks they just want to fly, so he grabs Alicia and jumps up into the sky. She flails around, and when they land, Raiga and Edgar also want to turn. The elf appears to be furious at Mabel, but Yosuke thanks her for singing to him, giving her another ring. The elf is about to lose it, but Alicia suddenly wonders why Mabel calls him Wolfgenblood, when she thinks his name is Kuroki. Yosuke explains that he just made them up, but tells them his real name is Yosuke. The elf is devastated he gave out his real name so easily, and the other two find his fake names to be cooler, which makes him happy. The elf gets mad at Yosuke, causing him to drop the dragon's flame. She wonders what he plans on doing with it, and he reveals that when they slayed the dragon, there was a warp in the space-time. He plans to combine the flame with other entities, in hopes that it will create a big enough portal for him to get home, but the elf suddenly tries to destroy it. She powers up her sword, and there is a struggle, but Fujimiya can tell that she just didn't want him to leave. She wonders if he ended up making the flame stronger to create the portal home, but Takafumi stops her, not wanting to ruin the story. They start getting hungry, so Yosuke decides to treat them to ramen again. They enjoy a delicious meal, and as they walk home, Takafumi thinks about how much his life has changed in just a year. But that's where this video ends. Remember to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you don't miss any videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. The story begins with a group of adventurers who are up against a deadly S-ranked forest dragon. It breathes fire, causing massive destruction to the area, and the adventurers are forced to run. Elsewhere in a field, we meet a young farmer named Al Lane. He tends to his crops and is pleased with how well everything is growing. He harvests some of the crops and prepares to head to the markets. He gets an alert from his status window and sees that his farming skills have all been maxed out, reaching level 10. He is joined by his friend, the fisherman Testa, who is amazed at his achievement. Testa is even a little jealous that Al even has a level 10 fishing skill when he is supposed to be the fisherman. Having maxed out all his farming skills, Al suddenly gets a special option to integrate and evolve his skills. He accepts it and gains the Nature Lover title. Al is confused what this means, but Testa sees that he suddenly has 65,000 status points, with over 73,000 attack and 45,000 defense. They're shocked, but Al remembers he needs to get to the market. Al heads off to the royal capital to sell his crops. Along the way, he sees the dragon attacking the adventurers. They're no match, and call to retreat. Al decides to help, and throws a carrot, hoping to distract the dragon. But the carrot hits, and the dragon explodes with a single blow. The adventurers are left shocked, confused at what happened, and Al is also surprised by his new strength. He quickly heads on his way, and the adventurers only see his trail. Al makes it to the royal capital Maghese, but while he is at the gate, there's a girl that's being kidnapped. The hooded man comes charging through, but Al jumps forward and saves the girl. The hooded man attacks Al with a knife, but Al easily disarms and defeats him. The man is arrested and the girl thanks him for saving her. They hear a bell, and Al quickly rushes off, not wanting to be late. The girl asks for his name, but Al just quickly speeds off. He makes it to the market and delivers his crops. As he goes to leave the city, he gets stopped by the guards. Al thinks he might be in trouble, but the girl he saved appears, and introduces herself as Phallus, the princess of the capital. Al becomes nervous talking to the princess, but she orders him to just treat her casually. She asks if he would be willing to serve the royal family. He says hell no, but only in his mind. Instead, he carefully tries to decline, saying he can't handle the responsibility. He tries to leave, but Phallus catches him. She tells him that they would pay him well, but Al says he is only interested in being a farmer. Hearing this, Phallus offers to give him a huge field near the capital, that's over 33,000 square meters. Al asks why she is willing to go so far just to recruit him. She tells him it's because he was able to so easily defeat the hooded man, who had a strength of over 500. Al asks what the average strength is, and Phallus explains that the average person has a strength around 50, adventurers are around 130, knights are up to 600, and the legendary hero has 1,000. Phallus asks to see his status, but Al knows he can't show her. The adventurers return and report that the forest dragon was defeated. However, they don't know who did it, only that there was a carriage. Hearing the report, Phallus suspects it was Al, but while they were distracted, Al quickly makes a break for it. Despite this, Phallus remains determined to recruit him. Suddenly a guard tells Phallus she is being called to return to the palace. There is a report that a large swarm of monsters are approaching the capital. All kinds of monsters like orcs, dragons, and golems. They're coming from the Hell Zone, which shocks the king. Because the leader of the Hell Zone, the Demon King, was killed by the hero, and they made a peace pact with the demons. We meet Officer Cecil. He suggests that not all demons are happy with the peace pact, especially the first general of the Demon King, Romeo Van Dead. He suspects that they found out that the hero passed away and now wants revenge for the death of the Demon King. He advises that the king leave the capital for his own safety. The king doesn't want to abandon his people, but all his soldiers beg him to survive. Al finally makes it back home, accidentally destroying his door with his new strength. He is exhausted from his day, and Testa suddenly comes knocking on his door. Testa tells him they need to evacuate because an army of monsters is nearby. Al suddenly thinks of his crops and rushes to his field. He is relieved to see his crops are okay. The army of monsters passes by, and Al realizes they are heading straight for the capital. He doesn't want to get involved because he is just a farmer, but then realizes that if the capital falls, he will have nowhere to sell his crops. Meanwhile, the king and princess have escaped from the capital, but they come to a dead end. The king is suddenly attacked with a blast of energy. Cecil transforms and reveals he is actually the demon General Romeo. He had been deceiving them from the very beginning. He reveals his plan to pose as the king, using his transformation magic, and rule the kingdom without the people knowing. But first he must kill the king. He attacks with his dark magic, but the king creates a barrier. The barriers begin to break as the king struggles to maintain it. Phallus helps to reinforce the barrier, but Romeo unleashes a second attack. The barriers break, and the king can no longer maintain the barrier. By herself, Phallus cannot defend against the attack, and the rest of the barriers are destroyed. Romeo goes to finish them off with his Overdarkness skill, but Al suddenly appears and stops the attack. He uses his plowing skill and shatters the ground, disrupting the army of monsters. Romeo is curious who he is, but Al just says he is an ordinary farmer. Romeo jumps behind him, but Al is able to catch his blade and throw him away. Romeo is impressed and decides to go all out. He absorbs the power from the nearby monsters and transforms to his true form. Looking at his status, Phallus sees that he is level 78 with over 5,000 strength. She tells Al to run away. Romeo unleashes his power and charges at Al, but Al counters with his own punch, and Romeo is defeated. The monsters are shocked Al won with a single punch and all quickly run away. They return to the palace and the king thanks him for defeating Romeo and saving their lives. But Al just says he did it because he wanted to protect his crops. The king asks him to serve the country, but Al declines, saying he only wants to be a farmer. The king offers to make him a commander or any title he desires, but Al remains determined to just be a farmer. As a reward, Phallus decides to give Al the 33,000 square meter field near the kingdom, but on the condition that he registers as an adventurer so he can occasionally help out the kingdom. Al agrees with this deal, but when he goes to check out the field, he finds it is complete wasteland, realizing he had been tricked by Phallus. The next day, Al explores the capital with Phallus, and he is amazed by all the different foods. Al asks her how she can just walk around the capital, but she tells him she has a maid acting as her substitute at the palace, and she uses a magical hairpin that stops people from recognizing her. Phallus takes Al to the Adventurers Guild, and they are immediately greeted by the guildmaster, who has heard the rumors of Al's strength. He takes Al over to the reception desk, where they meet the secretary named Helen. Suddenly, Al's stomach growls loudly, so they first get him some food. Helen makes him a delicious pie, and they continue with the interview. She asks Al why he wants to become an adventurer, but Al explains he is only registering because of his deal with Phallus. Suddenly the adventurers from the previous day appear, thanking him for defeating the S-rank dragon. Everyone in the guild is amazed, and Al becomes embarrassed. The adventurers introduce themselves as Jake, Luke, and Lamia. They wish him luck and tell him they should go hunting together. Al sighs, as he imagines being dragged away from his farming. Al mentions to Helen he wants to try doing a quest, but she explains that adventurers are ranked from F rank all the way up to double S rank. Because he is a new adventurer, he can only take on easy quests to begin with. She suggests starting off with a quest to collect 10 herbs from the Grim Forest. Helen tells him he should get some equipment because there might be monsters, but Al says he's too poor to afford any. Hearing this, Helen gives him her old cloak, enhanced with magical defenses. Al is reluctant to accept it, but Helen insists and helps him put it on. Helen becomes dazzled, seeing him in the cloak, as he seems to remind her of a certain someone. She wishes him luck, but Al can only think about his farming life. Al heads out to the forest and collects the herbs. While he is collecting, he comes across a peculiar black scale. He wonders what monster could have dropped it, but suddenly gets approached by a female orc. It pounces on him, wanting to breed with him, but Jake appears and saves him. The orc is defeated and Al thanks him for his help. He asks if they know more about the black scale. Jake has heard rumors of a black dragon, but doesn't believe it because black dragons dwell in the highlands and not the forest. Lamia suggests he can sell it for a decent amount of money. Suddenly, there is a tremendous aura that overwhelms them. They're frozen in fear as a black dragon emerges. The dragon is covered in darkness and walks right past them. Al is terrified, but manages to take a look at its status, only to be shocked at its monstrous stats. There is a girl that's running away, but gets caught, and Helen wakes up from her nightmare. The next day, her mother notices that she doesn't look too well. Helen tells her that she is experiencing memory loss, unable to remember what she did after work the previous day. Her mother suggests that she is overworking and should have some time off. Al returns to the guild and has an urgent report. They meet with the guild master and report their encounter with the black dragon. According to Al, it has a strength of over 230,000. Judging by its appearance, They suspect it to be the evil dragon, Ouroboros. They are shocked to hear this, especially Helen. Al shows them the scale he found, and Helen is horrified seeing it. She has a memory of her brother running away and being killed by the dragon. It's too much for her, and she faints. Al waits, worried about Helen, but her mother tells him that she is going to be okay. She recognizes the cloak that Al is wearing and explains that she is actually Helen's foster mother. 15 years ago she found Helen by the lake with the cloak. She remembered her name but lost all her other memories. She suspects Helen might have a connection to Ouroboros. Hearing this, Al is determined to help out. He heads to the library to learn more, but fails to find any clues. He decides to look into the reports from 15 years ago, back when Helen was first found. However, the librarian tells him that those reports are restricted and he is not high enough ranked to access them. Al tries to beg, but she turns him away. Phallus suddenly appears, surprising the librarian. She uses her position as princess to help Al gain access to the records. They're led into the restricted area, and they check out the damage records for the village where Helen was found. Al finds out that 15 years ago, the Honora village was completely destroyed, and there were black scales that were also found there. However, this incident was covered up, because the evil dragon is meant to be dead, but if it has somehow been revived, it would mean the whole world is in danger. The next day, the two head to Honora village to check it out. They find it in a completely destroyed state. As they explore, Al suddenly hears a voice. He follows the voice and they come to a grave, and a boy appears, wearing the same cloak. Phallus is confused who Al is talking to, because she is unable to see or hear him. Al realizes he is a ghost, and the boy introduces himself as Lay. The boy is glad to find someone that can finally see him, and notices that Al is wearing the same cloak as him. Al mentions how he got it from Helen, and Lay is glad to hear she is well, revealing that he is her brother. He mentions how the cloak was a gift from his father and was magically enchanted. Al puts the cloak around Phallus, causing her to panic and blush, being so close to Al. This, however, lets her see Lay, and she freaks out at his ghostly appearance. Lay continues to explain that Helen was the only survivor in the village, and says that she's in danger. There is a flashback to 15 years ago. Helen calls Lay for lunch while he is training with a sword, but trips and falls over. Helen worries for him, but Lay wants to become a warrior. Suddenly, dark clouds roll in, and fire rains from the sky. They rush back to the village, only to find it burning and destroyed. The black dragon lands, giving off a terrifying roar. A young child stands up to it, throwing a rock at it. The dragon can speak, and finds it outrageous that the boy can stand up to him. The dragon feeds off of their fear, and destroys anyone who has hope. It opens its mouth, gathering dark energy, as the boy becomes terrified. Helen and Lay watch from a distance, but know that they are powerless to do anything. They decide that their only option is to run, so they quickly leave the village. But as they run, the dragon flies overhead and finds them. They quickly run the other way, but the dragon flies after them, breathing fire. The dragon enjoys seeing them run in terror. Helen becomes exhausted and falls over. She tells Lay to go on without her, and the dragon lands behind her. The dragon prepares to devour her soul, but it gets hit in the eye as Lay throws his sword. He tells Helen to run, but the sword falls, and its eye is instantly regenerated. But the dragon turns its attention to Lay, deciding to eat him first. It lunges at Lay, and impales him with its teeth. Helen rushes to her brother, and the dragon delights in her despair as it makes him stronger. The dragon decides to let Helen live, but swears to return after 15 years to destroy her home again, causing her even more emotional damage and then feast on her soul. Lay swears to protect Helen even in death, and hearing this, the dragon decides to bind his soul to the area so he can witness her grim fate. After that, the dragon disappears, and Lay fades away. Back in the present, Lay explains that the dragon always leaves one survivor so they can spread the story and create even more fear. And when it awakens, it will hunt down that person and repeat the cycle. Lay begs for Al to help protect Helen, but he says that the dragon is too strong. But Lay mentions how the dragon only ate his soul when he became despaired. He believes that they can use the power, opposite of despair, to diminish the dragon's power. Lay asks Al to help him pass a message onto his sister, and Al quickly heads off, carrying Phallus as he runs. They are in a hurry because today is exactly 15 years after the dragon's previous attack. Phallus gets embarrassed, getting carried like a sack, and asks Al to carry her in his arms. But he says that this is the fastest way to run that he learned as a farmer. They make it back to the city, and fortunately the dragon has not appeared yet. Phallus calls Al a monster for treating her in such a way, but is also amazed by his immense stamina. The two go their separate ways, as Al goes to find Helen, and Phallus prepares the guards. Back at the guild, Helen's mother goes to check up on her, but finds that she's missing from her room. Helen walks alone in the forest, and soon the black dragon appears before her. It greets her after 15 years, and Helen's lost memories begin to return. She remembers that it was her fault that her brother died. The dragon reminds her how her brother would have gotten away if not for her. It says that because of her, all the people in the city will soon die. Helen begs for it not to attack the city, even offering her own life. But the dragon has no intention of letting anyone live. Helen despairs and prepares to end her life, but Al makes it to her just in time and stops her. Helen comes to her senses, but the dragon attacks Al, knocking him away. Al manages to survive, thanks to his cloak's protection. The dragon is shocked a human could survive his attack, but Al says he's not just a human, he's a farmer. Helen tells him to run away, but Al charges at the dragon, punching it in its face. Al tells Helen not to worry, and the dragon is surprised a human was able to hurt him. The dragon wants to see Al fall into despair, and the two begin to fight. The dragon charges at him, attacking with its claw, and Al struggles to defend himself. Al lands another punch, but the dragon unleashes its devastating flame onto him. Al is knocked away, and Helen tells him to leave her, not wanting any more people to die because of her. But Al tells her that it's not her fault. He tells her how he met her brother. Her brother knew she would blame herself when she regained her memories, so he told Al to tell her that he doesn't blame her for his death. He's proud that he protected his sister, and tells her to live happily for the both of them. Al gives her hope, and the dragon's power begins to diminish. The dragon curses at Al and dives at them, but Al is able to overcome the weakened dragon, defeating it with a punch. Al is finally able to relax, but just as he defeated the dragon, he suddenly gets stabbed by Helen. Al is confused, and tries to grab a potion, but struggles and drops it. Helen attacks him again, and Al barely dodges. Al tries to ask her what's going on, but Helen charges to finish him off. But suddenly a wing gets in the way. The holy dragon, Mirage, appears and reveals that Helen is being possessed by the evil dragon. The holy dragon heals Al and lends him his powers, but ends up collapsing as a result. He tells Al that he has given him the power to purify the black dragon and save Helen. The evil dragon laughs, thinking Al wouldn't risk hurting Helen's body, but Al instantly punches him. The dragon is shocked, and Al can see in Helen's eyes that she wants him to stop her. Helen seems to return to herself, but as Al helps her up, she grabs him, and the evil dragon's soul bursts out and dives into Al, trying to possess him. He declares his victory, but there is a problem. Inside Al's heart, there is only farming. He is shocked that there is nothing besides growing and harvesting crops. There is nothing he is able to corrupt, and he is rejected from Al's body. The holy dragon gets back up and uses his power to purify Helen. The evil dragon's soul is shattered, and the holy dragon thanks Al for his help. The beam of light fades, with Al and Helen left unconscious. When Al wakes up, he finds himself at the guild. Phallus hugs him, happy he is okay. Al asks what happened to the dragons, and Helen tells him that Ouroboros was purified, and the holy dragon also disappeared. Al asks if Helen is okay after being possessed. She says that she is fine, and has also gained the ability to transform her arms and legs into dragon claws. Al is shocked, thinking she is still possessed, but Helen shows she can freely control the power. She plans to use this power for good and save people in the future. Helen suddenly asks about Phallus's relationship with Al, not recognizing her as the princess because of her magical hairpin. Al gets a bit worried, and Phallus says that they are childhood friends. The guildmaster bursts in, along with Jake and his friends. They are glad that Helen is okay, and amazed that Al defeated the evil dragon. They wonder how the palace will reward Al for defeating the dragon, and Phallus swears there will be a huge reward, almost accidentally revealing her identity. They have a party to celebrate Al's victory. Luke teases Al for not drinking with them, but Phallus can read his mind, knowing that Al is thinking about harvesting his potatoes in the morning, and tells him he should relax. Helen shows off her new power to everyone, and they enjoy their night. The next morning, Testa helps Al with his harvest. He is amazed that Al can manage 2 separate farms. Suddenly Rix the mailman comes running by and delivers a letter to Al. It's a letter from his father, telling him they haven't seen him in a while and should visit them. Al is conflicted because he is busy with too many quests from the guild. Back in the capital, Al walks by a tomato stand. He is amazed by its shape and color. When he takes a bite, he is shocked, finding it to be delicious. He demands to know who produced it and learns that they are from a farm from a town called Lalugas. The shopkeeper tells him their secret is that they use a special fertilizer. Al dashes off, arriving at the guild. He tells Helen he needs to take time off from the guild, which causes her to panic. But Al says he needs to go to Lalugas to visit his family and check out those tomatoes. He asks if some other adventurers could cover for his quests, and Helen tells him that she can cover for him, revealing that she has also become an adventurer thanks to her powers. Outside the guild, he runs into Phallus. She wants to accompany Al on a quest, but he tells her about his plan to visit his parents. She gets excited and decides to tag along, wanting to meet and thank his parents. Al fails to deter her and just quickly runs away. Al walks through the jungle, getting excited as he thinks about the tomatoes. Suddenly an orc appears, but it appears to be friendly. Al remembers that male orcs are friendly toward guys, but it turns out it wants to bone. Al runs for it, but gets caught, and the orc tries to have its way with him. But the orc is defeated, and Al meets a young girl with blue hair. Al is traumatized from the encounter, and explains this is the second time he's been attacked by an orc. The girl tells him that the forest is dangerous, but Al tells her he is also an adventurer. The girl introduces herself as Ruri, and they find out they are both heading to Lalugas. They decide to travel together, but Al worries if it is okay for her to travel with a man, since they will need to spend a night in the wild together. Ruri jokes about cutting off his head if he tries anything, but says she is not worried because she isn't cute. But Al says that she is cute, and she is flattered. They continue on their way, and suddenly they sense danger. But it's actually just Rix, who delivers another letter to Al. It's a letter from his mother, and Al reveals to Ruri that he has actually been getting a ton of them, so that's why he is going there to visit his parents. But really he is going to find this special fertilizer. He then goes on to rant about tomatoes, and Ruri gets a headache. Al asks Ruri about her family, wondering if they were worried about her being an adventurer all alone, but Ruri says no one will worry about her. Ruri changes the subject and decides they should set up camp. She pulls a tent out of her bag, and Al is amazed she can fit so much into such a small bag. Al wants to know more about the bag, and Ruri tells him it is an heirloom left by her ancestor. Al wonders who her ancestor is, but suddenly his stomach growls and they stop to make some food. Al is amazed by Ruri's cooking and praises her for her use of ingredients. He then asks her why she is headed to Lalugas. She reveals she is going for training. She has heard rumors of demons appearing, so she is going to investigate. Al wonders why she is doing something so dangerous, and she reveals she is actually the descendant of the great hero that killed the Demon King. Al is amazed to learn this, but is still worried for her because she is a girl doing this all alone. Ruri freezes up and is surprised someone is actually worried for her and thanks him for caring. They decide to get some rest, and Al chooses to sleep outside on the floor. Ruri tells him to share her tent, saying she trusts him, but Al thinks it's inappropriate. Ruri mentions there might be more orcs, and Al quickly changes his mind. Al is surprised that Ruri has 2 sets of sheets. She tells him that it's her dream to have a friend chat with her until they fall asleep. Al decides to help fulfill her dream, but she ends up falling asleep right away. In her sleep, Ruri attacks Al, and he has a troubling night. In the morning, they reach Lalugas, and Ruri wonders how Al became injured. Al plays it off, and they enter the town. They say their farewells, but Ruri tells him that she enjoyed traveling with him and wants to join him again. Al tells her to be his escort for when he goes back to the capital, and she happily agrees. She draws him a map and tells him to find her when he is ready to go back. Ruri asks around about the demons, but nobody has heard anything. Suddenly she hears a scream, and there's a girl that claims her sister was abducted by a demon. She tells Ruri that her sister was taken into the Phantom's forest, and Ruri quickly goes to look for her, but there's a man that watches from a distance. Meanwhile, Al goes to visit his parents. As he goes to ring the bell, the door bursts open, and he gets tackled by his mother. She is overjoyed to see him, and ends up choking him with her hugs. Al struggles to breathe, but his mother doesn't let him go. His father appears, and punches him in the face, thinking he is doing something to his wife, but then realizes it was just his son. His wife gets mad, dragging him back into the house, and punishes him. They have dinner, and Al is fed delicious food by his mother, while his father continues to be punished. Al compares the food with Ruri's cooking, and his mother suddenly becomes interested to know if she is his girlfriend. His father tells him he should get married and have babies, but his wife breaks his back, saying Al is too young for that. Al explains that Ruri was someone he just met, and his mother apologizes for jumping to conclusions. Later, Al's father asks him about his business, and Al tells him he is there for the fertilizer. His father points out on his map where he can find it, but then asks Al about the marked location. Al tells him it's the hotel where Ruri is staying, but his father doesn't remember there being a hotel at that spot. Al then goes on to ask his father about the demons, but he hasn't heard anything about that. His father tells him it's time for bed, and Al quickly steals his father's bed, saying that he can't go back to his own room because his mother is waiting there. The next day, Al picks up the fertilizer and decides to go visit Ruri, but Al suddenly hears screaming and he runs into the crowd. The man says he was attacked by a demon, but says he got away thanks to a girl with blue hair. Al asks for the location and quickly runs off to find Ruri. The man gets back up, and with a snap of his finger, the crowd and hotel are revealed to be an illusion. Al runs through the forest looking for Ruri, but finds the girl Ruri had met before getting attacked by a demon. Al easily destroys the demon, and as the girl thanks him, she also turns into a demon and attacks him. But Ruri suddenly appears and saves him. She tells him that the forest is filled with these demons, but that's when the man from earlier appears, introducing himself as Loki, and revealing himself to be a demon. He is amused at how Ruri was so easily tricked, when no one in the town has seen any demons, calling her unworthy of being the hero. Ruri wonders why Al was dragged into this when he should just be after her. But Loki says Al is actually more important than her, because he single-handedly defeated the demon General Romeo and the evil dragon. Al realizes he is one of the demon's allies, but Loki says they weren't even on his level. Ruri charges at him, but he easily dodges and counterattacks. Al rushes to Ruri and uses his healing magic on her. Loki is surprised by this ability, and regrets not dealing with Al first. Ruri apologizes to Al and says that she is no match for him, but Al tells her not to worry because he is Farmer. He rushes at Loki, but gets thrown away. Al continues his attack, but gets slammed into the ground. There is a massive crater, and Al barely holds on, but he jumps back up and manages to land a punch on Loki. Loki retaliates with a punch of his own infused with dark energy, which blows Al away. As Al falls, his package is cracked open. Loki's wounds begin to heal, and he can see how the other demons were no match for Al. Al also casts healing on himself and gets back up. Loki is ready to end things, but Al asks why he is targeting him. Loki explains that he is going after everyone who could pose a threat to his future plans. Besides Al and Ruri, he is also going after Helen next, because she inherited the evil dragon's powers. Al is surprised to hear Helen is a target. Loki then goes on about Ruri, who should have the Holy God's blessing as the next hero, but she hasn't been able to use any of the Holy God's power. He decides to put things to an end, and summons his worm demons. Al and Ruri struggle against the worms, and Ruri tells Al to make a run for it. But Al refuses, and fights back against the worms, saying he wants to be the best farmer, and that he wouldn't be able to live with himself if he just left her. They finish off the worms, but Loki launches another attack. Al shields Ruri from the magic, and there is a huge explosion. When the smoke clears, they manage to survive, but appear badly wounded. More worms emerge, as Ruri is knocked away, and Al gets pinned down. Loki tells him that once the worms bite down, they never let go. He then turns to Ruri to finish her off, and she thinks back to her parents encouraging her, despite others saying she couldn't be a hero. She apologizes for failing to become a hero, as Loki launches his attack to finish her off. But suddenly, the worms turn white and shatter, as Al gets free. He explains that this is thanks to the power of his fertilizer, which has a pesticide effect. With this, the worms are unable to regenerate. Although surprised, Loki isn't worried, because Al is already so injured. But Al charges at him anyway, and he swears to protect Ruri and Helen. Ruri is confused about why Al is fighting so hard. She thinks back to her past, when everyone is telling her she was too weak to be the hero, and she gave up. But looking at Al's determination, she realizes that being a hero is not about being strong, but it's someone who never gives up trying to help, no matter what. While Al is fighting Loki, Ruri manages to stab him. Loki's wound instantly heals, but Ruri is determined to fight even if she can't win. Ruri suddenly awakens her hero's powers and attacks Loki with her Holy Slash. The attack is super effective, and Ruri follows up with another slash, which finishes him off. Ruri thanks Al for helping her realize what it means to be a hero, but Al collapses in exhaustion. While he sleeps on her lap, Ruri confesses that she has a crush on him. It becomes night, and Al finally wakes up. They have an awkward moment, and Ruri thanks Al once again, but ends up getting embarrassed. They decide to head back to the town, but as they walk, they suddenly hear a strange sound. Al wonders if Loki could still be alive. The sound gets louder, and Ruri gets scared, saying she can't handle ghosts. It's a voice that calls for Al, and it turns out to be his mother looking for him. Al realizes it's his mother. Not wanting to be caught with Ruri, he says they should run for it. He picks her up and quickly runs away. Al is relieved when they get away, and Ruri laughs at him, seeing that there is something he is scared of, and Al can only imagine the sight of his mother. They end up back in town, and are shocked when they find that the hotel is no longer there, realizing it was Loki's illusion. Ruri finds another place to stay, and Al tells her he will be heading back to the capital the next day. As Al heads back home, he remembers a time when he went out to play with Tessa without telling his parents, and his mother came looking for him. They were scared to get in trouble, so they snuck home, but when he got back, she was waiting for him at the door. Al wonders if she can somehow teleport. As Al gets back to the house, his mother is once again waiting for him. He tries to avoid her, but she suddenly appears behind him. Al is terrified and runs. He runs straight past his father, into his room, which causes his father to panic, as he is left to deal with his mother. The next day, his mother begs him not to leave. Al has no choice, and says that he will hate her if she behaves like this, and she immediately apologizes. Al heads off, and meets up with Ruri, and they head back to the capital. Meanwhile, back in the capital, Phallus has an emotional goodbye with her father the king, and he apologizes for failing her. Al and Ruri make it back to the guild, and Helen gets jealous of Ruri's relationship with Al, even flexing her demonic powers. The next day in the fields, a boy is picking some of the fruits, but Al catches him. Ruri and Helen arrive to help out on the farm, but Al is losing it at the boy. The girls are surprised Al is so angry, but he is just annoyed that his fruit was picked before they were ready for harvest, and he yells at the boy. The boy apologizes, and his stomach growls. Al gives him a cabbage instead, and the boy is blown away. The boy is brought to tears by its taste, and happily runs off. Helen mentions that while Al was away, there have been monster attacks, which has blocked off trade with other countries, and caused the price of food to increase, making it hard on the poor. They suddenly hear a bell, signaling a monster attack, and they quickly head over to help out. The city is being attacked by a huge swarm of monsters, while the guards and adventurers struggle to defend. Helen shows off her demonic transformation, and fights with her new demonic powers. Al charges with his hoe, and sends the monsters flying, but eventually, they begin to get overwhelmed by the seemingly endless number of monsters. Suddenly, knights from the kingdom of Antiesburg arrive, threatening the monsters to leave, or else face the wrath of their holy sword, Levitine. The monsters all back away and retreat, while Al is surprised there is a sword that can repel monsters. Later that night, Al polishes his trusty hoe, and Phallus visits to say goodbye. Al is confused about what she means, and she tells him that she will not be returning. Their meeting is cut short, as her maid tells her it's time to go. She thanks him for everything, and Al is left feeling confused. A few days later, the monsters have stopped attacking, and things are back to normal. Al is visited by the young boy and his mother. The mother apologizes for her son, and tells Al that, if he ever needs a tailor, he can visit her in town. They end up buying more vegetables from Al, and as they leave, Al is suddenly surprised by Rick's appearance. Al gets another letter from his mother, and Rick also gives him a copy of the paper, which shocks him as he reads it. At the guild, Helen and Ruri are also looking at the paper. They learn that Phallus is getting married to the Prince of Antiesburg. Helen wonders if it's a political marriage to get Antiesburg to protect their country. Ruri finds it strange how the monsters retreated from the knights, because monsters aren't supposed to be able to understand human words. Al suddenly arrives, and tells them to read his letter. It's filled with his mother saying she loves him, and Al gets embarrassed and rips it up. He hands them another page, and the girls read his mother's report on the monster attacks. She had heard of the attacks, and did her own investigation to make sure Al was safe, but she ended up finding out that the Holy Sword of Antiesburg is just a regular sword without any special powers. The girls are shocked at how she could know this, but Al tells them to keep reading. They learn his mother was able to figure this out because she used to be the commander of the Shadow Puppets. They are suddenly shocked to hear the Shadow Puppets, but Al is clueless of what that means. They tell him that the Shadow Puppets are the most elite group of spies, able to discover any secret. Al is shocked to hear this about his mother, and they continue to read on. It turns out the monsters were being summoned by a demon in Antiesburg, but his beloved was taken, and he was forced to send the monsters to attack. They come to the conclusion that Antiesburg sent the monsters to attack, so they could pose as protectors and demand the marriage of Princess Phallus. Al is determined to save the princess, but this actually surprises the girls, because Phallus had always used her disguise magic when they were together. Al quickly corrects himself, saying that as citizens, it is their duty to save the princess, and manages to win them over. Helen tells him it would be hard to get into Antiesburg, but Al reveals he has recruited Rix as their guide. Meanwhile, in the kingdom of Antiesburg, we meet the prince, Netalus, as he meets with various leaders who want his protection from the monster attacks. He says that there is only so much he can do with one holy sword, and they all try to offer him exceptional deals for his protection. Later, Netalus is overjoyed with how his plan is going, and orders the demon, Gazelle, to attack even more countries. However, Gazelle wants to stop the attacks, not wanting to see more of his comrades be sacrificed. But Netalus beats him, and reminds him that he has his girlfriend captured. Phallus suddenly comes in, and tells him he can't treat his servants like that. A guard comes in and reports that there is a delay on the carriage for their ceremony, and the prince loses it. But realizing that Phallus is watching, he tries to compose himself, and tells her he is looking forward to their ceremony. Phallus returns to her room, and wishes she could see Al again, but Netalus is outside, and wonders who she is thinking about. The next day, Al visits the tailor to pick up some outfits, and promises to bring them more vegetables. Al joins up with the others, and Rix tells them the plan. He tells them to pose as merchants for the ceremony, to get in and find the hostage, while he will gather monsters so they can expose Prince Netalus's holy sword as a fake. Helen is confused how he can gather monsters, and Rix reveals he is actually a demon. They're all shocked, and Rix explains he is also a member of the Shadow Puppets, and was taken in by Al's mother when he was young. He reveals that there are quite a number of demons that blend in with humans, and apparently the demon being threatened fell in love with a human girl but ended up in the hands of the prince. Al swears they will save everyone, and they commence their mission. They arrive at Antiesburg, and successfully make it past the gates. Al is confident with their disguise, posing as farmers, but the girls are not very impressed. They go over their plan, which is to sneak into the castle and rescue Gazelle's sweetheart, and then take her to the church, so they can get Gazelle to confess that the Holy Sword's power is fake. As Al heads to the castle, he is instantly stopped by a guard. He says he is delivering vegetables to the castle, thinking his plan is foolproof. But the guard finds him suspicious, and they end up getting chased by all the guards. Helen tells Al to go on ahead, and throws him into the castle. Al happens to land exactly in the right room, and tells the girl to come with him so they can save Gazelle. The guards come running in, but Al uses his vegetables, and handles the guards. The girl is chained down and can't run, so Al ends up carrying her while he runs from the guards. Al ends up meeting up with the other two, but they have to quickly run, as they are getting chased by all the guards. They see the church, and the girls tell Al to save Phallus while they handle the guards. Inside the church, the ceremony is underway, and Phallus says, "I do." And as they go in for the kiss, Netalus is suddenly hit by the door as Al bursts in. Phallus is overjoyed to see him, but Netalus says that Al is a villain, here to capture the princess. Al then tells everyone that the prince is the villain, and his holy sword is a fake. Netalus asks if he has any proof, and even the king tells Al that he has seen the sword's power. But Al says he has proof, and a guard suddenly reports that the kingdom is under attack by monsters. We see Rix, as he summons the monsters to attack. The guests tell Netalus to use the sword, but as he calls for Gazelle, he sees him reunited with his beloved. Rix brings the prince the holy sword, but he hesitates to grab it. Al says it's a fake and throws it at a monster, which destroys it with a single bite. Gazelle then reveals the truth to everyone. He controls the monsters with a demon flute, and says he was blackmailed by the prince to send monsters to attack the other countries. The king asks Netalus for the truth, but he just laughs and says they realized too late, and he has already sent a huge swarm of monsters to attack the capital. Gazelle is confused because he never made such a command, but Netalus says you can lure monsters in by just spreading monster carcasses. Netalus gloats, saying it's already too late, but Ruri and Helen burst in and say that the capital won't fall so easily. After their last battle with the monsters, the guards and adventurers had asked Ruri to retrain them. We see them as they hold their ground against the monsters. The king cries in gratitude, and Al tells Phallus she doesn't need to get married. The guards come rushing in, and Netalus orders them to capture the intruders. But they all throw down their weapons, and Ruri and Helen reveal that the guards switched sides after they explained the prince's evil deeds to them. Netalus is outraged, and charges at the king, but he gets stopped by a radish, and Al beats him up. Netalus is taken away, and Phallus jumps on Al, telling him that she loves him. Ruri is confused and jealous of the princess. Al tries to say it's all a misunderstanding, but even the king thanks him and welcomes him into the family. As the king leaves, he is stopped by Rix, who hands him a letter proving that Netalus was just a pawn for someone else, and he warns the king to be careful. After that, they all celebrate at the guild, and the guild master tells Al that everyone has been requesting him for quests, but Al reminds him he just wants to be a farmer. Phallus visits the guild and rewards the adventurers for their help defending the capital. Helen wonders why it feels like she knows the princess, and Al panics. Phallus returns in her disguise, and Al can't handle keeping the secret. Phallus officially meets Ruri and declares that she is the one that will be with Al. Al can't handle them and just leaves to tend to his crops. He harvests his vegetables, but Ruri and Phallus have followed him there. They ask who he likes more, but Al just tries to distract them, talking about his vegetables. Ruri wonders if there is someone else that he likes, and Al says that there is. The girls are shocked to hear this, but Al quickly runs away. Back at his house, Al looks at a photo and reminisces over a girl called Olivia. There is a flashback to 15 years ago, as we see Al's father harvesting potatoes. He becomes shocked when he sees that Al has harvested so many. Al is overjoyed, but his mother gets mad that his father is making him work. Al ends up taking some of the potatoes to give to their neighbors, but suddenly they notice a girl being chased by two men. The girl is a thief, and Al wonders who she is. The neighbors tell him she is an orphan that lives in the mountains, and the men want to sell her off. The girl bites the man and gets free. She runs right past, grabbing the basket of potatoes, and runs off. The girl stuffs herself with the potatoes, but Al finds her. She runs away, but notices that Al has food, and he tells her that the potatoes are better when cooked in a soup. She is scared of him, but Al leaves the soup behind, and she can't resist it. Over the next few days, Al keeps bringing her food, and eventually, she waits for him, and they have a chance to talk. She introduces herself as Olivia, and is amazed that Al grew such delicious food. Al's stomach suddenly growls, and she offers to share the sandwich. But Olivia is suddenly caught by the two men, and they prepare to sell her off. Al says that she has stopped stealing, but the men tell him that they need to recoup their losses. Al begs them to let her go, saying that he will pay back everything she stole. However, the men don't believe him and refuse. But Al's father appears and learns about the situation. He offers the men 3 months' worth of rice as compensation, and they happily accept and leave. Al wonders if they will be okay, but his father gets worried about what his mother will say. He suggests that they will need to cut back on food for the next few months. Olivia returns the potatoes she stole, and Al's father suggests that they could use some extra hands on the farm. Al happily agrees and invites Olivia to live with them on the farm, and she is overjoyed. 2 years later, Olivia helps out on the farm together with Al. She wants to take a break, but Al loves his farming. He tells her to play with the other kids, but she says that she only wants to be with him. Suddenly, Testa comes running, getting chased by some killer bees. But Al's mother easily fights them all off, cutting them into pieces. His mother tells him that they are headed off to the capital to look for a new house. Al thinks it's strange, because their house is just fine, but his parents tell him to look after the farm while they are away. His parents leave, and Al asks Testa why he was getting chased by the bees when there should be none in the area. Testa reveals a map, saying that there is a great treasure in the forest nearby. The forest is usually dangerous, but since all the bees are gone, Testa suggests that they can find the treasure. Al becomes convinced, and Olivia asks to come along, but Al tells her it could be dangerous, and he leaves her behind. Along the way, Al wonders why Olivia is always clinging to him, thinking that she should make friends with the other kids. Testa reveals that Olivia actually gets bullied when she is by herself. Al is shocked to hear this, and realizes this was the reason why his parents were looking for a new house. The two arrive at the location on the map, and they step on a stone, which opens up the mountain, and they fall inside. They have a look around, and find a tablet that they don't understand. As Al touches it, it begins to glow, and everything goes dark. An enormous beast appears, and Al gets devoured. There is a volcano eruption that rains fire down, and when Al wakes up, he sees Olivia, but he suddenly feels a sharp pain in his chest. Testa comes in, and Al wonders what happened in the forest. They go outside, and find everything destroyed and covered with ash. The bridge out of town is also destroyed, so they have no way of getting help from the capital. Food is being rationed out, but there isn't enough to go around. Al checks the farm for food, but it's all been destroyed. Al suddenly feels the pain once again, and falls to the ground, but he still worries about finding food for Olivia. Later that night, Olivia sneaks into the elder's tent to steal food, but she remembers Al begging for her second chance, and telling her that he loves seeing people enjoy his vegetables, so she manages to stop herself. The next day, Olivia combines their food, and gives it all to Al. Al asks why there is more food than normal, and she lies to him, telling him that aid arrived from the capital. Al is glad, and Olivia says she can't wait to eat the food that he will grow. In the following days, Olivia keeps giving Al her food, and eventually, she passes out while thinking of him. Al wonders where Olivia has gone, and Testa rushes in and tells Al that they found Olivia's body. Testa tells him that she's starved, but Al is confused, thinking that they got aid from the capital. Testa tells him that they haven't even heard from the capital, and Al realizes what Olivia did for him. Al cries for her and blames himself for her death. Al remembers his promise to grow vegetables for her, and he gets back to work. One day, after one-shotting a dragon, Al comes across an unconscious girl lying on the ground, and he ends up taking her back to his house. When Al wakes up, he sees the girl is up, and she asks how she got here, and wonders if he kidnapped her. Al tries to explain that he isn't sus, and was just worried when he found her. The girl explains she was on her way to the guild to issue a quest, and Al offers to take her. Al introduces himself, and the girl reveals her name is Linnea. Later, Ruri comes to visit, but sees Linnea, and becomes flustered. Seeing her wearing Al's clothes, Ruri misunderstands, and runs away crying, and calling him a jerk. They end up at the guild, where Helen listens to Linnea's request. She says there is something strange going on in her town, but finds it hard to explain. Helen thinks the request is too vague, but Al ends up accepting the quest. When Linnea reveals she is from Gallia town, Al is shocked. He loses it, because Gallia is known for having the best asparagus in the world, and he can't wait to go there. They prepare to head off, but Linnea is confused why Al is being so nice to her. She thinks he must have an ulterior motive, because her father taught her that men are like wolves. Al tries to assure her, and although she still thinks he is a bit sus, she decides to trust him. Meanwhile, Ruri is watching and gets jealous. They get a ride to Gallia, but along the way, an orc chases after them. Al freaks out, but the driver isn't too worried. But when he looks back, there is a whole horde chasing them, and Al has emotional damage from his past encounters. When Al wakes up, he notices he is wearing a pendant. Linnea tells him it's a pendant that helps with soothing the nerves. They make it to the town, and when they pass through, Al finds it strange that the guards are holding mops. In the market, Al sees a stall, and quickly orders an asparagus skewer. As it gets cooked, Al tries to ask if the man has noticed anything strange going on. The man says everything is fine, and gives Al his food, but it's completely burnt. Al is confused, but then realizes that the man is acting strange. A cart suddenly tips over, and when Al checks on the man, he is also acting strange. Al suddenly gets picked up and carried away. Later, Al visits Linnea's house. Her family runs a pendant shop, and she thinks it's thanks to the pendants that she is not acting strange like the rest of the townspeople. Al asks where her parents are, but she tells him that they went missing when the anomaly began. The townspeople are all acting crazy and can't communicate normally. The lord of the town appears, and Al is honored to meet the man that started the asparagus revolution. He also wears a pendant, and Al asks him about the town. The lord tells him it's a long story and invites him for dinner, but Al gets picked up and carried off again. Later, they visit the lord's house and join him for dinner. Al asks about the town, but the lord suddenly has his guards surround Al. In an instant, Al is able to defeat all the guards. He charges at the lord, but Linnea gets in the way. The lord reveals that Linnea is working for him, and we see he is possessed by a demon. The demon reveals that he put his power into a crystal and put it into the goddess statue in town, so he can control everyone. He plans to do the same to the capital. After he heard about Al defeating the demon general and the evil dragon, he planned to put a crystal into Al's body and control the capital. Linnea reveals she had no choice, because her parents were taken hostage. As the demon prepares to put the crystal into Al, he throws a flashbang, which doesn't seem to do anything, but there is an explosion, and the goddess statue is destroyed. The demon is confused what happened, and Al explains the flashbang was just a signal to his friends. The demon is shocked because Linnea was spying on him this whole time, but Al reveals that when he got carried away in the town, it was actually Ruri and Helen. They even saved Linnea's parents. Al tells him it's over, but the demon takes the lord as his hostage. Al uses the power of asparagus and force feeds the lord. He reminds the lord of his love for asparagus, and he is able to break free from the demon's control. Al takes the chance and finishes him off. Linnea thanks him for his help and gives him a kiss, much to Ruri's dismay. She declares that when she gets older, she will find him and win him over. Al is left stunned, and he heads back to the capital. After that, Al goes back to tending to his field, with Ruri, Helen and Phallus all helping him out. Phallus notices the pendants that Helen and Ruri both got, and gets jealous. She wants to confess to Al again, but Ruri reminds her they want to give Al some space. Suddenly they hear Al screaming. He is devastated to find that some weeds have grown among his crops. It's a pesky weed that sucks up all the nutrients from the surrounding crops. He is outraged to find that so much has grown under his watch. Helen is amused that weeds are a bigger threat than the demons he has faced. They head into the city to sell their vegetables. They are quite popular, and even the king comes in disguise. The king wonders when Al will take Phallus as his wife, but Al avoids the topic. The king tells him he will give him even more farmland and newly developed farming tools. Al imagines the tools and can't help but be enticed. Ruri tries to stop him, and Phallus throws a potato at her, but it ends up knocking Al out. Al sees an angelic figure trying to talk to him, but he soon wakes up. They sell all the vegetables, and Al gets an evil look as he thinks about destroying the weeds. He runs into Rix and shows off the herbicide he is going to destroy the weeds with. They suddenly see some men capturing a girl to sell off. Al approaches them and easily knocks the two men out. The third guy runs away, and the girl is revealed to be a demon. The girl is scared, but Rix recognizes her as Yuria and shows her he is also a demon. Rix reveals that Yuria is the daughter of the demon lord. Yuria begs for their help to save the demons and reveals that her attendant, Volfi, suddenly told her that she wasn't safe. He then opened a portal and sent her away. She wants to go back and save the demons, but Rix says that the demon territory is on the other side of the ocean and it would take at least 3 days on a boat. Al takes on the job and hands his pesticide to Rix so he can look after his crops. Al tells them that he has a faster way to get there, and he ends up carrying Yuria as he runs across the water. Yuria freaks out and tells him to stop, but Al says they will sink if he stops. They end up making it to the demon territory, and Yuria is thankful they got there so quickly. Volfi suddenly appears and starts attacking them. Al manages to stop the attack, but Volfi continues to attack with his magic and even shoots at Yuria. Al manages to get behind him and knocks him out. Yuria is confused why he was attacking her. Volfi gets back up and charges up another attack, but suddenly, Al's mother appears and knocks him out. She reveals that she heard from Rix and came to make sure he was okay. They head off together and arrive at the Demon Lord's castle. They find that all the guards are dead, and Al wonders what happened. His mother thinks that they were controlled to fight each other, just like how Volfi appeared to be controlled. Yuria rushes into the throne room and finds her father lying on the ground. Al finds a guard that's still alive, and he reveals that there was a girl. He suddenly warns Yuria as Al's mother tries to attack her, but is stopped by Al. Al can tell that she isn't his mother, because his real mother would have hugged him so hard his bones would shatter the moment she saw him. She is amazed he could see through her perfect disguise. She returns to her true form, and it's revealed that she is actually Olivia. Al is shocked how she is still alive, thinking back to when he witnessed her death, and Olivia reveals that she is alive thanks to the power of the evil god. She shows off her power, attacking Yuria, but Al dives and manages to save her. There is a huge slash and explosion, and when the dust clears, the whole mountain has been blown away. Olivia is surprised that Al managed to dodge her attack, and says it must be because he also has the evil god's power in his body. Al is confused what she means, and Olivia explains that his nature lover skill, that boosted all his stats, is actually a skill from the evil god. Al doesn't believe it, because he has never met the evil god, but Olivia tells him that he has. She promises to explain everything if Al decides to join her. She tells him that they can live together again, and she persuades him using her enchanting eyes. But Yuria calls to him, and he snaps out of it. Olivia gets annoyed at her for getting in the way, and grabs Yuria by her neck. Al tries to help her, but Olivia stops him. She tells him if he accepts the evil god's power, she can let her live. Yuria tells Al to run, and Olivia gets fed up with her and decides to finish her off. Al gets free, and before Olivia can attack, Al's pendant suddenly activates, and when Al opens his eyes, he finds that time is frozen. Al is confused what is going on, but the angelic figure appears before him once again. She introduces herself as the god of good. She tells him that thanks to his pendant as a catalyst, she was able to appear. She froze time with her power, but they don't have long. She tells him she can destroy the evil god's power within him and give him her own power, which will allow him to fight. She takes his hand and grants him her power. She turns back time, and before Olivia can attack Yuria, Al activates his new power. Olivia gets worried, but it just makes a bunch of sprouts pop up. Everyone is confused, and Olivia thinks it's a lame skill, but it grows rapidly, and Olivia gets caught by its vines. She is able to break free, and she summons a sword. She charges at Al, but he uses his power again, creating a wall of vines to protect himself. The vines grab onto her again, and despite cutting them down, they grow back and bind her. Volfi comes rushing in and attacks using his magic. He checks up on Yuria, and she is glad he is back to normal. Olivia seems unscathed from the attack, and retaliates with her own magic. She dashes past Al and goes to finish him off, but Al begs her to stop. She says that she's become bored, and says they will meet again soon when it's just the two of them. A dark energy surrounds her, and she disappears. Volfi violently questions Al's relationship with Olivia, but the king reminds him that he just saved all of them. Al explains that she is his little sister, and he tries to explain her connection with the evil god, but the king doesn't have much information about the god, and promises to contact him if he finds anything out. Yuria gets sad that Al is leaving, and she hugs him, but Volfi gets jealous of them and accuses Al of trying to seduce her. He gets back to the farm and finds Testa helping with his crops. He explains everything that happened and asks if he remembers the time they explored the ruin, but Testa only remembers him passing out and didn't see the beast that appeared. Al is disappointed to hear this, but they have a delicious tomato together. Al thanks him for helping out and tells him to visit the capo with him, but Testa says he is too busy with his fishing. As Al heads back to the capo, he takes the shortcut, but once again attracts an orc. He has had enough and decides to face it head on. He punches it with all his strength, but it only gets knocked down, and Al is shocked. It gets back up, and Al runs for his life. He gets saved by his adventurer friends, and they wonder if he has gotten weaker because he's still having trouble with orcs. Al thinks it's strange, and they get back to the guild. He tells Helen and Ruri, and they are confused how an orc could survive his punch. Helen asks to see Al's status, and we see that his overwhelming strength is gone. Al realizes that when the goddess gave him her power, she removed the evil god's skill that was boosting his stats. Helen tells him not to worry, because he is still much stronger than the average adventurer. Rix appears and delivers another letter from his mother. Helen and Ruri peek at it, but there is a warning to them about making a move on Al, and they wonder if his mother has people watching them as the former commander of the Shadow Puppets. Al continues to read on, as she promises to investigate Olivia, and tells him he is always welcome home, and then just goes on telling him how much she loves him. As Rix leaves, he runs into Phallus. She wants to hang out with Al, but Ruri and Helen both get jealous. As they all hang out, Al continues to wonder why Olivia suddenly appeared, and what the evil god is after. But he tries to enjoy himself with the friends that he has made. He thinks back to how he met each of them and the adventures that they've had. He is determined to get stronger so he can protect them and protect his crops, because he is farmer. But that's where this series ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. The story begins with a young assassin named Sulo infiltrating a villa, attempting to steal the dragon's ring. She comes close to the ring, calling the security pathetic, but when she grabs the ring, an emergency alert is sent to the guards, who immediately begin pursuing her. Her partner rushes to her aid and knocks the guards out. They quickly depart the estate and board a ship to discuss their plans. She informs Yun, her lover, that she wishes for the two of them to quit their organization. However, he gets apprehensive and tells her that the only way for someone to leave the organization is through death. He stabs her, but finds out that she switched out the dragon's ring with another that she had prepared for their wedding. She takes the dragon's ring and leaps into the ocean, but the dragon's ring is activated. Elsewhere, we see a man as he fights demonic boars with his lightning attacks. He senses a disturbance in the time-space and heads towards it. At the Low Mansion, a young girl is being tortured by a group of people, and Sue is reincarnated into the girl's body. She is confused at first, but gains the memories of the body. She starts fighting back and quickly gets the upper hand against her opponents. The man arrives and helps knock out her attackers. When he approaches her, she ends up attacking him as well. He gets back up and grabs her, heading straight for the testing palace, where everyone born must pass the spiritual exam. He tells her that she was tested when she was 5 years old, but had 0 spiritual energy. The spirit energy is divided up by the 5 elements, and has 7 different levels. She has no affinity with wind, water, or lightning, but her spiritual grade for wood and fire is the highest level. The famous dragon's ring is also discovered in her body as she completes the test. It's a legendary item, from when the time-space goddess and the great Emperor Ninian fought together against the spiritual beings. And when the Emperor died, the goddess sealed his soul into the dragon's ring. Crow-shaped monsters begin to appear as soon as they sense her. The man quickly sends Sue off on his horse while dealing with the monsters. Back at the mansion, Sue's servant girl, Lulu, is overjoyed that she's okay. Sue finds out that she is actually the crown princess. Sue drinks some tea, but it's disgusting, because ever since her spiritual energy was measured to be 0, she has been treated like garbage, especially by her sister Shuxi. who wants to take her position as the crown princess. To Su's amazement, the little girl discloses the young man's identity to be Prince Jin Wang. He is the world's #1 cultivator of the lightning element. Meanwhile, in the crown prince's palace, he enjoys the company of some beautiful women. But suddenly, one of the girls speaks in a man's voice. The woman transforms into a mysterious figure, and the two plot against Jin Wang. He reports about Jin's visit to the testing palace and notes he was accompanied by Su. The crown prince visits the Low mansion, and Su is brought before the prince. Shuxi appears and accuses Su of being jealous of her looks and attempting to poison her. Shuxi has also organized the barracks commander to show a fake bounty that he claims was issued by Su. As they argue, the prince is attacked by an unknown individual, who is eventually revealed to be Mr. Beiqing Ling, master of the Beiqing Palace and chairman of the barracks. He reveals that the barracks commander took a bribe. Ling is well acquainted with the crown prince, and Su wonders if the prince is gay. Su's father reprimands her for her behavior in front of the prince and has her detained. Su awakens in the dungeon to discover Lulu sobbing at the cell door. Lulu tries to pick the lock, but Shuxi appears. She and her servants begin beating up little Lulu. Shuxi tries to whip Su, but Su grabs a hold of it, pulling her in and threatening her. Their father appears, and he attacks her, seeing her as nothing more than trash. The prison shakes and Prince Jin Wang arrives, smashing the roof open. Seeing Su in such a state, he becomes angered. Su's father suddenly switches sides, and begins criticizing Shuxi for plotting against Su. He tries to suck up to Su, but she calls him shameless, and she decides to cut her ties to the family. Su is brought to Prince Jin Wang's palace. Jin tries to sense the dragon's ring in her body. He explains that the dragon's ring has the power of time-space, but it's suppressing the power of her fire and wood elements. Thinking about how Lulu was beaten, Su asks the prince to help her unseal her powers. He tries giving her a bunch of different elixirs to help unlock her powers, but no matter how many she eats, it has no effect. When that doesn't work, he goes to look up the manuscripts, and he notices one in the language of the ancient gods, but as he reads the scroll, something dark emerges from the scroll and strikes him. He wakes up and finds his hand is being consumed, but shocks himself with his lightning to keep it contained. Su goes to find the prince, but finds him unconscious on the floor. She tries to help him, but the prince's eyes turn red and he suddenly snatches her by the neck. Using some glass, Su cuts the prince and manages to get free, and he soon passes out. A celestial entity in the guise of a lovely lady arrives, and looks after his health. Later, Lulu tells her that the heavenly figure is the Yaoqi Palace's master, Liao. Prince Jin Wang appears in front of her, and apologizes for hurting her. Su asks if he found a way to unlock her powers, and he tells her that they need the water of spiritual sky, but it is only found in the crown prince's palace. So their only option is to steal it, which Su is confident at doing. Later that night, they sneak into the crown prince's palace. In the treasure room, they fall into an illusion, which takes them to a hidden armory, where weapons of every caliber are stored. Jin Wang assesses the situation, and notes that their goal is to make it to the next door. It's guarded by thunder clouds, so he uses his own lightning to draw the clouds' attacks away. Su dashes toward the door, but gets a strange feeling in her head as a strange blade calls out to her. She becomes distracted and rushes for the blade. The clouds return and strike lightning on her, but Su is able to use the blade, as it recognizes her as its master. The two get through the door and make it to the water of spiritual sky. The ground shakes, and Su is subsequently dragged up into a massive sphere of water. Jin jumps in to save her. Su begins to drown and Jin kisses her to give her air. The crown prince goes to catch them, but when he arrives, the water prison is broken and the two have vanished. The crown prince suspects that they were able to escape because of the time-space power. The two were transported back to Jin Wang's palace, and they even returned with the alchemy pot. Liao appears, bringing important news about a rare beast hunt occurring in the Sunset Mountains. In the mountains, Liao is excited for their hunt, but Jin disappoints her, telling her to go on ahead while he takes Su somewhere safe. He sets her down and gives her a pendant in case she gets into trouble. He heads back to Liao. A dragon appears, breathing fire at them, so they combine their energies to fight against it. Meanwhile, Su discovers a mysterious egg and becomes overjoyed. But the crown prince appears behind her. He wants her back, now that he knows she has the power of time-space. He warns her about Jin Wang, saying he suffers from a dark energy that will one day consume him, but he used the power of space to suppress it, which he absorbed from his mother, and will do the same to her. The crown prince hears the roar of a dragon, and a blast of energy is fired at their location. Su falls, and when she wakes up, she looks for the egg and finds it hatching. It hatches into a dragon, and it bonds with her. and suddenly her time-space power activates and she falls asleep. When she wakes up, she finds herself in a completely different place. The dragon can speak, and tells her this is a space she created. The dragon explains to Sue that only her soul can enter the space, so her body is still on the outside. The Crown Prince's aide approaches Sue's body, seeing she has unlocked her wood and fire elements, but quickly leaves when he hears another voice. Sue awakens to find a girl saying that Jin Wang sent her to look for her. However, when Sue looks the other way, she pulls out a dagger. While she is attempting to kill Sue, her dragon appears and eats the assassin's blade, and even bites off the woman's hand. Sue gets behind the girl and finishes her off. She recognizes the girl as being one of Li Yao's maids. The Crown Prince wakes up and finds the pendant that Jin had given to Sue. Jin appears and confronts him about Sue's whereabouts. Li Yao begs Jin to rest. Suddenly Sue appears and Jin is overjoyed that she is okay. Jin tries to approach her, but she pushes him away. He asks who harmed her, and Sue points out Li Yao's maid. Jin says that they were with him the whole time, and asks Sue to believe him, but she thinks he is only interested in her power of time-space. She takes out her dagger to ward him off, but this causes Li Yao to defend him. But Jin steps in the way and takes the attack to protect Sue. We see them back at the palace, and Jin's dark energy is going out of control. He is kept restrained as Ling, and some of the elders try to treat him. Suddenly, a ray of light appears, and Li Yao materializes in the room, able to calm Jin down. She has not been able to find a cure for Jin, but suggests they need to find Grandmaster Hong Yun, the best potion maker in the land. Sue insists on accompanying Li Yao to find the Grandmaster, saying she can help out, but Li Yao laughs at her. Despite their differences, they come to an agreement and head off. At the Crown Prince's palace, we learn that he had actually let Jin and Sue go. He wants to kill Jin, but the only way to do that is to let his darkness consume him. He would need to kill Sue, who is the key to curing his darkness, but the Crown Prince also wanted her time-space powers for himself. His partner calls him too greedy, and the two go their separate ways. Sue and Li Yao travel on their flying horse to the Yunwu mountain, but they find that it's protected by a barrier that disables their powers, so they are forced to climb up, which Li Yao struggles with. Sue takes the lead, and eventually are able to make it to the top. They meet the Grandmaster Hong Yun, and Li Yao asks for his help. He says he has no interest in their gifts, but tells them if they fight, he will help the winner. Li Yao creates countless arrows, firing them at Sue. Sue dodges the arrows, but when some are about to hit her, she manages to block with a barrier of wood. Li Yao loses sight of Sue, and she reappears behind her with her sword to her neck. And Sue is declared to be the winner, but the Grandmaster was also impressed by Li Yao's abilities. He invites her to participate in his event, where he will choose a disciple next month. Li Yao leaves Jin's care to Sue, and she leaves to prepare for the event. The two then get ready to return to treat Jin, and the Grandmaster uses a strange technique that teleports them across the country. Sue is shocked how they arrived back at the palace, and the master reveals he used space magic. He tells the others that, in order to treat Jin, he requires a large amount of high-quality crystals to make an elixir. Ling is shocked at the number of crystals needed, and they immediately gather all the crystals that they have, but find that they don't have enough. Ling explains to Sue that crystals have different grades based on their color, and that they are found when cutting open stones, so it's all up to luck to get the high-quality crystals. Sue's dragon Meng appears, salivating at the thought of eating the crystals. It turns out Meng is able to sense the grade of the crystal without even cutting it open. Sue gets an idea and heads to the market. Meng transforms into a dog. They go to the stone guessing market, and Meng picks out all the valuable stones. As Sue goes to pay, two strangers suddenly appear in the market and announce that they are buying up all the stones for their grandfather's birthday. They are identified as Hao and Di, the young masters of the Luoya house. Sue tries to ignore them, walking away, but the two try to grab her bag. They end up spilling all the stones on the floor and mixing them all up. They are unable to tell who owns which stones, so Sue proposes a wager. They each pick 3 stones, and whoever chooses the best gets to keep everything. The siblings pick first, but when Hao grabs a good stone, Ming quickly pees on it to stop him from picking it. When they open up the stones, the siblings have 2 crystals, while Sue has 3, so she gets to take all the stones. Sue's sister Shuxi appears and tries to convince the siblings to join her in dealing with Sue, but they are not interested. Shuxi is then approached by the Crown Prince's ex-partner and claims he wants to be her ally in dealing with Sue. Back at the palace, Ling is shocked at the number of crystals Sue was able to obtain. Sue and Ling are waiting outside, and Hong Yun finishes Jin's treatment. Jin is revealed in a much better state. Sue tells him once again that she has repaid her debt to him and tries to leave, but he tells her to stay by his side. But Sue is hesitant because when his dark energy goes out of control, he will try to devour her power again. However, the Grandmaster tells her that if she becomes strong enough, Jin will not be able to devour her power, but instead she will be able to cure him. The Grandmaster tells her that if she can learn how to make an elixir in time, he will let her participate in his disciple selection event. A few days later, Sue and Jin travel together through the ocean, and they soon arrive at an island that rises out of the sea. It contains countless secret cultivation books that are highly sought after. More ships arrive, and they are soon joined by other people, including Ling, the siblings, and Liao. Once they enter, there are countless doors revealed, but only one leads to the treasure. They all pick different doors to try, and Meng pops out of Sue's clothes and jumps on Liao. Liao gets annoyed and leaves to choose a different door, but Meng opens the door, sensing treasure. An enormous fish skeleton emerges from the ground and soon turns into an entrance, and it appears to be the treasure room. After Sue finishes choosing her books, they are all transported back to the hallway. Liao is devastated that Sue has found the treasure room from her original door, and her brother Tian swears to help her get even. There is an earthquake, and everyone gets split up. Sue is transported outside, and is suddenly attacked by ice. Liao's brother Tian intends to kill her and take the books back for his sister. Sue's foot gets stuck, and she gets trapped in an ice coffin. There is an explosion, and the ice coffin goes flying into the ocean. When Sue wakes up, she finds herself on land, although she is still trapped in ice. Jin finds her, and he tells her to date him for 3 months, and Sue reluctantly agrees. Jin uses his lightning to melt the ice. He manages to free Sue, but ends up falling unconscious. Sue can tell that he was already wounded, but still tried so hard to help her. Sue gathers some herbs, but is soon confronted by Tian. Sue runs away from him as he continuously attacks. Sue is eventually caught and her hands are tied up as they go to find Jin. On their way, she tells him that she needs to pee. She hides behind a rock and quickly summons Meng, who is easily able to bite through the rope. After a while, Tian notices that Sue has escaped. Tian creates a massive blizzard to flush her out, and as she tries to avoid his attacks, she falls down a cliff, landing in a strange crimson area. Tian follows after her, but finds that his ice magic doesn't work in the scarlet area. There's a cave, and Sue heads deeper into the area. A stone tablet appears, saying that the fire cave can only be sealed if you sacrifice half of your cultivation. Tian doesn't care about the penalty, and seals the cave. Soon, Jin arrives, having recovered from his injury. Jin is furious, and knocks him out. Inside the cave, Sue passes out from the heat and Meng tries to help her. He takes out her alchemy pot and puts her inside. Sue dreams about helping Jin, and Sue starts gathering herbs unconsciously. Jin sacrifices his cultivation and reopens the cave. He finds Sue unconscious on the floor. She wakes up and is glad to see him. When she opens her hand, she finds 3 pills. Jin tells her that they are pills to help restore one's cultivation. She had unconsciously made them while wanting to help Jin recover. Jin takes one of the pills and is able to restore the cultivation that he sacrificed to open the cave. Sue becomes happy that with these pills, she is qualified for the Grandmaster's event. The day of the event arrives, and the Liao siblings plan to expose Sue. The Crown Prince acts as the host of the event, and he announces the rules. Every family is allowed to send one person to submit an elixir they have created. If the elixir is of high enough quality, the pot will glow and they will be allowed to participate in the event. Ling casually passes through with his elixir, and Shuxi passes as well. When it's Sue's turn, Liao interrupts. They both throw their elixirs in, and the crowd is impressed at Liao's blue glow. However, Sue's elixir is rated with a purple glow, the highest possible level. But before Sue qualifies, Liao points out that Shuxi is already in the competition, and it's against the rules to have 2 members of a family participating. But suddenly, the siblings' plan to expose Sue is put into action, and de-exposes that Sue is actually adopted and has no right to participate for her family. This plan backfires and Jin jumps on stage, claiming Sue is not breaking any rules. The next round begins, and each participant is given 15 minutes and a chest with random ingredients to create an elixir, and the top 4 will advance to the next round. The Grandmaster judges the level and quality of each elixir. Sue is in 5th place and misses out on the next round. However, Ling withdraws, and Sue takes his spot. The next event is a deathmatch with no rules. Sue is up against Shuxi, and Shuxi quickly gains the upper hand as she hurls her aura towards Sue. Jin is confused how Shuxi was able to suddenly get so strong. Shuxi charges up her power, while Sue combines her wood and fire elements to create a whip. However, it's not enough to break through Shuxi's attack. Shuxi begins to celebrate, but Sue takes out her elixir and eats it. It gives her a surge in power, and Sue activates her space magic, destroying Shuxi's magic and purges her dark power. As Jin watches, he spots the shady figure that was helping Shuxi and pulls him in. He is revealed to be a member of the Assassin's clan that has been chasing Jin since he was a boy. As Jin goes to unmask him, the man uses a technique and manages to get away. The final event begins. They are transported into an underground maze, but Liao recognizes where she is. They are in the underground passages beneath her family's palace. They are sent to find a firestone. Mei ends up getting the firestone, which he found hidden in the wall. Liao finds them. She is able to activate the traps in the maze, dropping boulders onto Sue. Using her scarf, Liao steals the firestone from Sue and drops another boulder on them. Sue is confused why she is able to activate the traps, but Liao tells her that the Grandmaster must be helping her to win. Liao returns from the maze, and she hands over the firestone to the Grandmaster. They are interrupted by a woman. She is revealed to be Yan, the Mist Fairy from the demonic clan. She explains that 15 years ago the Grandmaster crippled her eldest disciple and vowed to provide her with a replacement. Liao gets taken, and with her gone, Sue is chosen to be the Grandmaster's disciple. The Grandmaster and Sue arrive at Yunhua's Peak. He tells her about the place, but Sue is not allowed to enter his house. He gives her a book about herbs and tells her she needs to memorize it. Elsewhere, Liao is ready to submit and calls Yan her master, but Yan casts a spell on Liao's face. She says it's a magic that will reveal her true appearance, but Liao is confused. After a month, Sue has finally memorized the book. The Grandmaster tests her and pushes her off the cliff. Sue focuses and manages to open a portal. The Grandmaster congratulates her, and Sue realizes he is teaching her both potion making and space magic at the same time. Sue goes to find the Grandmaster, but remembers she is forbidden from entering, but she sees a painting of a woman that moves and Sue is too curious. She sees that the woman wields the same weapon as her. Suddenly the Grandmaster appears, startling Sue when she accidentally cuts the painting. Sue feels terrible and thinks of a way to make it up to her master. She looks in her book to find out what the painting was made of, and finds that it is composed of the leaves from the acacia tree, which can only be found in the forbidden dark forest. Sue arrives at the dark forest. As she explores, a girl comes running out, as a golem chases after her. Sue fights with the golem, attacking with her fire, but it has little effect. Sue opens a portal to retreat, and the girl jumps in with her. The girl thanks Sue for saving her and introduces herself as Mei. They soon get attacked by tree roots, but Sue gets grabbed by a root from behind and gets dragged away. The roots take Sue to the acacia tree, and she begs to have some of its leaves. But the tree forces her to eat its fruit, and Sue finds that the acacia tree has grown in her inner space. The woman from the Grandmaster's painting appears, and then we learn that Hong Yun was her disciple. They both vanish, and a tiny baby appears. Sue recognizes that these are the memories of the tree, and it begins speaking with her. The tree wants Sue to be her master, so he can travel with her using her space. Meanwhile, Mei and Meng find Sue, but she is unconscious because she's in her inner space. They get attacked by Liao and her master. Sue gets captured, and Mei is defeated, but she manages to send off one of her cranes to get help. When Sue wakes up, she finds herself imprisoned by Liao and her master. Liao uses the face-revealing potion on Sue, and Yan goes to prepare for the Grandmaster's arrival. A mask forms on Sue's face, and Liao enjoys her suffering, but Sue taunts her, saying she is hiding her face because she has become ugly. Meanwhile, Jin receives Mei's letter, informing him of Sue's condition, and he instantly rushes to find her. Sue quietly opens her space, and tree roots begin to spread. The roots burst out and capture Liao, but Liao tells her she will not be able to escape from her master's barrier. Sue tells Liao if she can help her escape, she will give her the fruit of the acacia tree, which can heal all wounds and ailments. Liao helps her escape, and Sue gives her the fruit, and Yan appears behind them. Yan's magic is too strong, and she overpowers Liao. Sue works out the secret behind the barrier. Sue creates a magic bell that rings and destroys the barrier, and they all fall down the cliff into the sea. Meanwhile, Jin and Ling arrive in the dark forest. We learn that Mei actually has the same master as Jin. They're not sure where Sue was taken, so they decide to split up. Jin arrives at the Twilight Mist and finds the Grandmaster is also looking for Sue. The Grandmaster tells Jin to find Sue, but warns him that she might not be the same. Sue floats on some wood, and a ship passes by. She gets saved, and when she wakes up, a man enters the room. She is shocked, recognizing him as Yun, her lover that betrayed her. He tells her not to be afraid, but Sue backs away from him and falls. She looks in the mirror, and sees that her face has changed. Yun explains that he is the same person from her past, but this is actually her original world. And Sue is left wondering who she really is. We see Mei as she searches for Su. Ling teases her for wearing a cooking pan on her head, but Mei says that it was because of her that Su went missing, and that she won't take it off until they find her. Jin appears and tells them to be serious. He says he has sent out over 100,000 men to look for Su across the kingdom. Ling says he has also recruited 30,000 mercenaries to help them search across the land. They split up to continue their search, and Jin swears to find Su at all costs. Meanwhile, a group of assassins flee, as Grandmaster Hong Yun pursues them. They know they are no match for him, and ask for a swift death, because the assassin clan forbids them from revealing their secrets. However, the Grandmaster reveals a white token, and the assassins recognize him as the White Lord. With this, they reveal Su's location, telling him she is with Yun, the prince of the Xijing nation. Back on the ship, Su meets with Yun, and he has prepared some hot pot like they would have in the other world. Su has a flashback to when she and a group of other abandoned kids were adopted to be assassins. Su is feeling down, but Yun cheers her up with some hot pot, and they make a promise to be with each other forever. Yun tries to remind Su of their promise, but Su doesn't trust him because he betrayed her. Yun explains she is originally from this world, and when he stabbed her, he avoided her vital points. It was his last resort to get the dragon's ring to activate so she could return to this world. Su tells him the only reason she is with him is to learn about her identity. They are suddenly alerted, but it turns out to be just the servant. Su heads outside, and Yun follows after her. Su sees a peculiar bird and some ships on the horizon. Yun says the bird has good vision and is commonly used by spies. Suspecting that someone is following them, he instructs his servant Jia to locate the closest port for them. After arriving at the harbor, they establish camp in the woods. Yun tells her he was assigned to be her friend on Earth, and his father knows her true origins, including her parents. Yun tries to distract her with the sunset, but Su tells him that their time has passed, so he should stop trying to win her over. Later that night, Su sneaks out, but gets caught by Jia. Su says she was just going to the bathroom, but Jia insists on accompanying her, but it seems they are being watched. Su sends out the acacia tree and heads back with Jia. Meanwhile, the acacia tree grows and catches the spies that were following them. They turn out to be the men that Jin sent out to find Su. The tree delivers a message from Su to the Grandmaster, saying she can fix his painting and apologizes for being unable to return. The men realize that they have found Su, and they quickly send word to her friends. The next day, on their way to meet Yun's father, they are suddenly attacked by paper cranes. Ling and Mei appear before Su, but they don't recognize her, and quickly apologize and leave. Suddenly lightning strikes, and Jin appears. He embraces her, glad to have finally found her. But when he sees her face, he becomes apprehensive, grabbing her with his lightning and questioning who she is. Things look bad for Su, but Meng breaks things up, leaping into Su's arms and returning to her inner space. When Jin notices this, he remembers the Grandmaster's warning that she might not be the same when he found her. Realizing she is Su, he tells her how much he missed her, but Yun comes and takes her other hand, and the two begin to fight over Su. In the end, Su breaks up the fight, and Jin asks why she stayed with Yun instead of coming back to him, and she tells him Yun has answers about her true identity. Jin demands to join her, and Yun has no choice but to allow them. They have a break for hot pot, and Yun brings up stories from his past with Su. Jin gets jealous, and they fight again, this time over giving Su food. Meanwhile, in the Hell City, Jin's master meets with his other disciple Shan. They are plotting to help Jin claim the throne, but the master scolds Shan for failing his mission. As he exits the room, he notices Liao walking into the master's room with a veil covering her face. Afterward, Shan confronts Liao, asking why she is wearing a veil. She explains her face was scarred, and he wants to help her get justice, but Liao says it doesn't matter, and Shan is surprised how mature she has become. Liao takes her leave, but as she does, the Grandmaster passes by, and she wonders if he was also there to see her master. Meanwhile, we meet the Emperor as he chastises the Crown Prince. They have a disagreement over the prince's wife, as the Emperor doesn't give his blessing for their union. As the Crown Prince leaves the palace, he knows he is being followed, as a paper talisman reveals itself. Su and the group climb through a snowy mountain to get to the Xijing capital. Jin appears to struggle with some kind of condition, but hides it from the others. They are suddenly attacked by a pack of beasts, and they prove to be quite a challenge. Jin is able to fend them off, but becomes affected by his condition. The group gets split up, with Yin leading Su away. But Su turns back to help her friends. She covers herself in the holy water, and attracts all the beasts towards her. As they jump on her, she teleports away. She leads them off a cliff, grabbing onto the acacia tree, and the beasts fall into the water. There is one beast left, and Jin saves her just in time, but ends up falling unconscious. Su kisses him and brings him into her space, which helps to improve his condition. Su swears she will cure him when she gets stronger. When they return from the inner space, Su checks on Jia, but ends up binding her with the acacia's branches, saying she knows what she did. Jia had put a special spice into their meal, which attracts the normally peaceful snow beasts. She says she wanted to help Yun by splitting Su away from Jin. When Jin is ready to attack her, Yun comes to her aid and defends her. Su lets it go, but warns him not to mess with her friends. As soon as everyone continues forward, Jia thanks Yun for keeping her safe, but she is suspicious and casts a spell on him to make him weak. Later, as they arrive at the Shijin Palace, they find it to be dark inside. Jin detects 50 people in the shadows, but suddenly there are fireworks, and the King Ouyang appears. There is a whole production, as he sings a song to welcome Su, and says it's been over a decade since he saw her. He tells her to call him uncle, as he is friends with her mother. Su asks how he knows her mother, and the king goes into another song. When the king was young, he escaped the palace to explore the world, but ended up broke and alone. That's when he met Su's mother, who fed him and helped him get back to his country. When he became king, he swore to help her in any way. The last time he saw her, she brought Su, and told him she has too many enemies, so she asked him to use the dragon's ring to send Su to Earth, where she would be safe. He then sent his own son as well, with the instruction to stab her when the time is right. Jin is confused why she had to be stabbed, and Yin tells him that the dragon's ring reacts to anger, and getting stabbed by her lover could achieve this. Ling asks the king if he knows where Su's mother is, but he says he has no idea. However, the king tells Su her mother's have a final request. It was for him to help her find a blood ginseng, which when eaten, will let Su inherit her mother's legacy. But unfortunately the king has had no luck finding it, and her friends have no idea either. Hearing all this, Su wants some time to think things over, and Yin tells her he has especially prepared her room. When Su checks out the room, she finds it filled with things from her past. There is a lipstick that reminds her of when Yin gave her one as a gift in the past. But now she throws it away, and Ming thinks it's food and has a bite, but is quickly disappointed. Su wants to check her herb book to look up the blood ginseng, but Ming reminds her that she threw it away. Su has no choice but to write out the contents of the book which she has memorized. Meanwhile, Jin tells Ling to find information on the blood ginseng, and he departs to contact his mercenaries. On the other hand, Mei gets drunk and continuously requests more drinks. The staff informs her they are low on wine, so she goes off to look for more on her own. As she stumbles around, she encounters the king, Yun, and Jia, who look to be engaged in planning. The king tells her he will send more wine to her room, but as she leaves, Mei secretly sends a paper crane to find out what they are discussing. Su successfully recalls the properties of the blood ginseng, which seems to provide massive benefits for space sorcerers. Suddenly, a figure enters the room through the window, and Su finds that it was just Jin. He laughs at her messy appearance and gives her a change of clothes. Jin is dazzled by her new outfit, and tells her to forget about Yun. They are about to kiss, but Mei and Ling interrupt, saying they have news to report. But Jin gets mad and zaps them. For ruining his moment with Su, he punishes them, forcing Ling to hold Mei up without touching the ground. Ling goes on to report that the blood ginseng is one of the treasures being offered this year by the Muxian Mansion. He then tells them that in ancient times, a man called Mr. Mu found a mystical land where rare plants and treasures would grow. He established his house there, but would often get attacked by people looking for treasures. So in the end he signed a peace pact to open up his house once a year and bring out 100 treasures for people to find and compete for. Mei goes on to report what she heard. Jia complains to the king about Yun, almost letting her get killed by Jin, and she threatens to cast her spell on him once more. The king says that they are both at fault, and reminds them that they are working on a task that has the potential to change the world, warning them to do their jobs correctly or they will both be replaced. Suddenly, Yun jumps into the room and gets immediately restrained by Jin and Su. He has come to tell Su the truth. He says that his father did actually know her mother, but wasn't telling the whole truth. He warns them about Jia, saying she is not just a normal servant. He says that they should go after the blood ginseng, but Jin refuses to let him come along. However, Yun reasons that if they don't take him and Jia, the king will be suspicious and send people to secretly follow them. Instead of being secretly followed, Su agrees to bring them along, despite Jin's protests. The next day, the king sees them off, and they head to Muxian Mansion. Ling wonders why they don't just fly there, but Yin tells him they must save as much strength as possible so they can face the traps and obstacles at the mansion. As they travel, a giant boulder comes falling down. Jin uses his lightning to destroy it, but it bursts and creates an odd fog. It's a strange poison, but the acacia tree saves Su with its fruit. Su gets caught and pulled away. She finds Liao and wonders if she is working with Yun and Jia, but Liao says she is there to ask for another acacia fruit. Most of her scars were healed, but there is still one that remains. Liao is willing to give anything for another fruit, but Su remembers how she tried to kill her and turns her down. She gives the fruit to cure her friends, and they continue on their way. The group makes it to the entrance of the Mushin mansion, but the entrance appears to be blocked. Ling tries to break through with force, but it doesn't work. Ming appears, sensing treasure, and drags Su in. The others see that weapons are prohibited, and they quickly follow after Su. Inside, Ming is also gone, because his ability to find treasure is not allowed. It's complete chaos inside the mansion, as people find and chase after treasures. The Liu siblings are among the people fighting for the treasures. Suddenly, a masked man appears, declaring he has obtained the blood ginseng and quickly makes a run for it. Hearing this, Jin tells the group to chase the man. The group chases after him, and Su uses her space magic to get ahead. She tries to catch him with the acacia tree, but he dodges and dashes across the water. Liao appears before the man, offering to catch him in exchange for an acacia fruit, and Su comes from behind. But the man slips away, and Su ends up in an awkward situation with Liao. The man leads them to a crimson field and disappears. As the others investigate, they are also transported away. They find themselves transported to a mysterious forest. Jin and Su notice something strange, and realize that they are surrounded by demon eye trees. The demon eyes surround them and attack, wanting to drain their spirit power. The group easily fights them off, but there seem to be just too many. Eventually, some of the eyes latch onto Su and absorb her power. Su becomes weakened, and a swarm of eyes attacks her. However, she gets saved by Liao, and she requests an acacia fruit for saving her. Su wonders why her appearance is so important, but ends up giving her the fruit, and Liao quickly leaves. The mysterious man appears again, and as the group tries to catch him, he sinks into the water. Everyone falls in after him, and they are transported once again. This time they arrive at a misty bridge. They are unsure if they should cross, but Jia volunteers to go first. Su sends the acacia tree after her just in case, and as Jia crosses the bridge, a chain suddenly grabs her. Despite the acacia tree grabbing her, its branch gets broken. The group crosses the bridge and sees that Jia is fine. They find themselves at the inner part of the mansion, where all the best treasures are hidden and where the owner of the mansion lives. When they head inside, they find it filled with treasures. They get another glimpse of the man, but when they follow him, they just find a dead end. Meanwhile, the mysterious man reveals himself to be the crown prince, and he joins his wife, Yua, the owner of the mansion. She asks what he has been up to, and the crown prince says he was just watching the people fight over the treasures. But Yua reveals she has been watching him through her magic mirror, and gets angry that he led a group of people through the secret teleportation points, and led them to the inner area. The crown prince says he knows she gets lonely because people rarely make it to the inner area, so he brought some random people to entertain her. Hearing this, Yua thinks he is so thoughtful and apologizes for getting mad at him. But suddenly they hear Jin and Yun talking about Su in the mirror, and Yua realizes that the crown prince is helping his ex-fiancée. Yua becomes outraged, thinking the crown prince must still love Su, so she hits a red button. The room begins to shake, and the group gets transported, and they are each imprisoned in a barrier. Jin tries to use his lightning to break free, but it's no use. Su tries to use her space magic to escape, but that also doesn't work. Yun tells them that the barrier is made from a special jade that blocks most magic. Suddenly, a swarm of demon eyes appears in each space. They are more advanced than the ones they faced in the forest, with the ability to change forms and adapt. Jin fights a serpent, which he destroyed, but it reforms into a man. Things are looking bad, as everyone struggles against the demon eyes. Just as things are about to get ugly, the demon eyes disappear. A giant disco ball drops down, and Yua makes her entrance. She introduces herself to them as the 186th head of the Mu family. The crown prince is also revealed. Since he brought them all here for her entertainment, she decides to have some fun. She decides to start with Su, and brings her to the front. To make things fair, she restores Su's strength. She challenges her to a fight. If Su can defeat her before the incense burns out, she will let them all go, and even give her the blood ginseng. But if Su loses, all her friends will be killed. The incense is lit, and the fight begins. Su starts off by attacking with her fire, but Yua dodges, and there is a flash of light. Yua can also use fire, and throws it back at Su. Su uses her space magic, and attacks Yua from behind. But there is another flash of light, and Yua can also use space magic. Yua teleports all around Su, toying with her, and knocks her to the ground. Su wonders how Yua is able to use space magic, and Yua reveals that her disco ball has the ability to copy all attacks for her to use. The incense is burning out, and the Crown Prince panics. He looks over to Jia, who he knows is a part of the assassin clan, but she is powerless. Yua notices the Crown Prince's odd movements, and thinks he is being seduced by Su. Yua becomes enraged and decides to kill all Su's friends. They are all stabbed, and Su is devastated. Yua whips Su, and she crawls over to Jin. They share a moment, but Yua breaks it up, as she finishes Jin off, and continues to whip Su. Su falls unconscious and enters her inner space. She is then told by the acacia tree that there is a way to win. Su is demoralized, but the tree tells her that Liao planted a seed from the fruit she gave her, so he has an extra branch outside that they can use as their secret weapon. The acacia tree erupts from the ground, and it has also found the blood ginseng. Yua is shocked the ginseng was found, and outside it seems like blood begins to rain down. Yua demands the ginseng back, attacking Su with her different treasures, but Su manages to block or avoid all the attacks. She approaches the blood ginseng, but Yua reveals Jin is still alive, taking him hostage. The Crown Prince tells her to choose the blood ginseng, and Jin tells her that he trusts her. Su chooses the blood ginseng, and Yua finishes Jin off. Su begins to create a concoction in her alchemy pot. While Yua tries to stop her, we learn that the blood ginseng will give a space sorcerer the power to go back in time. Su descends into her pot and emerges with her powers awakened. She goes back in time to a few moments earlier and stops Yua, stabbing her with the acacia tree. Yua's blood floats in the air, forming a sword, and enters into Su's mind. After that, Su sees the Crown Prince sneaking away and confronts him. The prince says he was working undercover to help her. He says he worked with King Ouyang, Yun, and the assassin clan. They told him to seduce Yua and convince her to put up the blood ginseng as a prize. He swears he had no ill intentions, and Su suddenly disappears. Su moves back in time, unable to control the power. She watches the events of the previous day, but is unable to interact with anyone. She tries getting Jin's attention, but she gets pulled by an unknown force. But she manages to push through, summoning a blood drop that flies into her body. Su awakens in the body, and is glad to see Jin is alive. She locks the door, predicting Ling and Mei's arrival. Jin is shocked at how Su knew they would be there. Su then tells Jin about the catastrophe at the Mushin mansion, where she witnessed all of her friends dying in front of her and was unable to prevent it. But Jin tells her that since they are all alive and healthy, she saved everyone, which relieves her. Su is about to warn him about King Ouyang's connection to the assassin clan, but she suddenly freezes up. Yun shows up while Ling and Mei are bickering outside, and Jin suddenly comes out holding Su. He asks Yun for help, and he is taken to a healing spring. The king also arrives, and immediately notices the mark of the blood ginseng on Su's head. The king is delighted seeing this, and acts distressed by Su's condition. The king says that he has brought his nation's best healers to help, and asks Jin to leave Su in his care, but Jin insists on staying by her side. The king's attendants appear suspicious, and they are surrounded by a darkness that tries to provoke Jin's dark power. Ling watches from a distance, and we learn that Jin predicted this. Jin is playing along while they find a way to escape. Ling keeps watch, while Mei rushes to get help from Hell City. Mei rushes into town to pass on the message to the Hell City spies, but finds them all dead. She runs into a woman she recognizes as the Third Elder, who tells her that their spy network within the Shijin nation has been destroyed. It's impossible to get a message out to Hell City, and the woman is revealed to be a traitor, and Mei engages her in a fight. Meanwhile, back at the spring, Jin hears voices telling him to consume Su's power. His dark power begins to manifest, and he struggles to control himself. The king joins in, and uses his magic to compel Jin to attack Su. But Su blocks the attack with her magic that activates. As Yun and Jia watch, Jia calls Jin foolish, revealing she saw through his plan. She caught Ling hiding in the trees, and was the one who took out the Hell City spies. Jia mocks Yun about falling in love with Su. Although he was only meant to pretend, Jia can tell that he fell in love for real. Yun says he has no regrets, but Jia reveals that once Jin absorbs Su, they will reset the universe. Su will be gone, and only she will remain. The ritual continues, as a circle appears and the water begins to rise. But things are put to a stop, as the Grandmaster appears. The king is shocked to see him, and the Grandmaster blows everyone away. The king's attendants all flee, and the Grandmaster reveals Ling and Mei, who thank him for saving their lives. The Grandmaster confronts the king, who tries to fight him but is no match. He even throws his son at him, but the Grandmaster gets a hold of him. He comments on how the king was able to so easily sacrifice his son, but the king reasons that if they achieve their goal, his son won't remember when they reset the universe and bring back Han Yun's master. But the Grandmaster says, despite wanting his master back, he knows that would be against her wishes. He continues to choke the king, but the king says that the Grandmaster is the White Lord of the Assassin clan and is forbidden from killing. Although he can't kill, the Grandmaster teleports to the north and leaves the king on a battlefield. The Grandmaster returns and admits his connection to the Assassin clan, but it's more complicated than they think. Both Ling and Mei decide to trust him after he just saved both their lives. He starts healing Jin, which confuses Ling why he isn't saving his disciple, but the Grandmaster explains that he can see that Su already obtained the blood ginseng and turned back time once. It has its risks and her condition is beyond his healing. Ling asks what the king wanted with them, and the Grandmaster explains that they wanted to combine Jin's dark blood and Su's blood space powers to create a dark space-time array, which would let them control the power to reverse time and change history. Jin wakes up and says he will do anything to save Su. The Grandmaster says that to save Su, they must go back to the Muxian mansion. The next day, Liao is waiting in the mountains, but the group comes flying right past her. At the Muxian mansion, the Crown Prince is luring people with the blood ginseng, but the group zooms right past him. He is left with the other treasure hunters and quickly makes a run for it. The group swiftly makes it through all the teleportation points and makes it to the inner area. As they arrive, Mei notices Yua, who seems to have a different appearance. Yua is startled and drops her food, but Mei catches it. Yua is grateful, introducing herself as the head of the Mu family, and offers Mei a reward. Mei asks for the blood ginseng, and Yua happily agrees. She brings out the blood ginseng, and the Grandmaster starts his procedure with Su. The Crown Prince also returns, but he seems to have brought a mob with him. They're all amazed to see the blood ginseng, wanting to take it for themselves, but Jin and the others fight them off. As they fight, the blood ginseng is fused with Su's body thanks to the Grandmaster's spell, and Su awakens as her power overflows. Everyone watches in shock and amazement as Su levels up multiple times thanks to the blood ginseng, instantly becoming a Grandmaster level space sorcerer. In her inner space, Meng and the acacia tree also develop, and Meng evolves into a new form. The treasure hunters all jump on Su, but get blown away, and they make a run for it. Mei is amazed at Su's advancement, and Su quickly thanks the Grandmaster for saving her. The Grandmaster warns her about the dangers of messing with time. Yua arrives with the prince, and Su sees her new appearance. The Grandmaster tells her she also has the power to erase a person's existence, and she had done so when she killed Yua in the other timeline. Su says that she had no choice, because Yua had killed her friends, but the Grandmaster says that no matter the reason, erasing someone is taboo, and is the reason why she was punished. He warns her that next time he might not be able to save her. He then congratulates her on advancing to the Grandmaster level, a feat that would normally have taken 20 years, and he says that she is now ready to inherit her mother's legacy. He reveals that her mother is the woman from his painting, and tells them that the world is made up of 3 realms: the human realm, the spirit realm, and the god realm. Su's mother was the goddess of space, Yanhua, and she somehow ended up in the human realm. She explored the world, and ended up taking 2 disciples, the Grandmaster, and a man named Han. She then founded the Assassin clan to set up an information network to help her find a reincarnated baby that was said to bring disaster to the world. She granted them all powers, but in exchange, forbid them from taking human lives. After 100 years, they still couldn't find the baby until one day, Yanhua was given a message that changed her plan. She decided to instead use the power of space to create an entirely new world and rewrite the laws of God. To do this, she trained more space sorcerers, but the spirit realm noticed her plan and sent an army to stop her. This turned into a war, and most of the space sorcerers were killed, and the Assassin clan was weakened. They were losing the war, but Yanhua was also pregnant. She used her powers to give birth, and divided her power up between the acacia tree and the Grandmaster, telling them to protect her daughter so she can carry out her legacy. After that, she fights against the army of the spirit realm, and the Grandmaster joins her, wanting to fight with her until the end. But he gets knocked away, and his master takes her chance to send him away. After that, she was captured and taken away to the God realm. The Grandmaster then goes to his master's child, but finds Han holding her. He says that they will never have the power to ascend to the God realm to save their master, so instead, he plans to use her child, along with the blood ginseng and dark blood, to turn back time and bring their master back. Han runs away, and the two fight over the child. The Grandmaster destroys his eye, and he drops the child. In the end, Han gets away, and he was left with the child. He used the dragon's ring to split her soul, sending most of it to Earth, but leaving one piece in this world so she could return. The Grandmaster says that Han ended up taking control of the assassin clan and joined up with King Ouyang, who also wanted to bring back their master. He tells Jin that he was chosen as a child, and the assassin clan has been secretly feeding him dark energy. Su wonders why her mother wanted to create a new world and who her father is, but the Grandmaster doesn't know, and he instructs her to go to a secret ground that may have the answers to her questions. Jin escorts the Grandmaster out and is suspicious of his intentions. He believes everything is going according to the Grandmaster's plan, and he intentionally lets Su fall into King Ouyang's trap so she would get the blood ginseng, and his plan to make Su a Grandmaster-level sorcerer would be achieved 20 years sooner. He also wonders how Su could possibly create a new world as a half-goddess when even her mother failed to do so. Jin tries to attack him, but he dodges. The Grandmaster says that everything has been within his predictions, and he risked Su getting the blood ginseng because it would have been more dangerous to cultivate for 20 years with the assassin clan after her. As for his question about creating the new world, the Grandmaster says he has no need to know, and Jin is frustrated by his answer. Jin returns to his friends battered, and he tells Su to forget her inheritance, saying that the Grandmaster is using her. But Su insists on finding out who she is, and can't just give up on inheriting her mother's legacy. Jin is hurt that she is not willing to trust him and flies away. The others make their way to the secret grounds, and Mei tries to cheer Su up about Jin leaving. They make it to a town and stop for food, but Su can only think about Jin, and a shady figure watches them from outside. Su and Mei get drunk, and they all end up falling into a well, but this was a trap to draw out their stalker. They surround her, and she reveals herself to be Liao. She once again asks for another acacia fruit, because in this timeline she still has a scar. Su remembers that it was because of her help she was able to defeat Yue at the Mushin mansion, so she tells Liao to join them and promises to give her another fruit. Later that night, Yun is also watching them, and he gets approached by Jia. She tells him that they must continue with their plan. Yun says that without Jin present, he will follow them into the secret grounds and find a chance to capture Su. Jia tells him that Jin visited the assassin clan to arrange a deal with their leader. We see Jin storming in and meeting with Han. Jin wants to work with them to disrupt the Grandmaster's plans. Han admits that he plans to sacrifice both him and Su to turn back time, and they will no longer exist in the new universe. But Jin is okay with it, because he believes that the Grandmaster's plan results in a worse ending for Su. Jin reveals the white token, and demands to become the White Lord. When he fought with the Grandmaster, he managed to steal it from him. With this, Han agrees and joins his red token with Jin's. He activates a spell, and Jin takes the Grandmaster's place as the White Lord. The next day, the group looks for a clue to find the secret grounds. As they look around, the chess piece the Grandmaster gave Su flies into a fan and changes into a beast. It runs off, and the group chases after it. It leads them to a dead end that changes into a door. Mei fails to open the door, so they try combining their powers to push it open. As they push, a fan suddenly opens the door, and Liao's senior, Sean, appears and tells them to hurry in, as some talismans follow after them. Mei is overjoyed to see her senior, and she introduces him to Su. Liao wonders what he is doing here, and he explains that he was sent by their master to assist them. As they walk around, the ground suddenly moves, and they are all thrown into a river. As they flow down the stream, they see that this space is filled with gigantic creatures. Yun and Jia manage to sneak in, watching from a distance. The group ends up getting split up, with Liao ending up in a frozen area, Ling being sent to an underwater area, and Mei ends up in a place filled with magma. As she tries to find her way out, she gets attacked by a golem. Meanwhile, Su is led by a giant floating hand, and she eventually comes to a gigantic knight, which comes to life and attacks her. She blocks its attack and shatters its sword. She apologizes for awakening it and tries to leave, but the knight continues to attack. However, she is saved by Sean, and Su ends up stabbing the knight, and it is defeated. She celebrates with Sean, and he offers her an apple, which she happily eats. They head off to find the others, but walk away from the floating hand's direction. Meanwhile, Yun and Jia come to a fork in the road while trying to track Su. Yun spots a carnivorous plant, and tells Jia that Su must be in that direction. When they get close, Yun pushes her into the plant, but Jia casts magic on Yun, causing him to suffer. She tells him to free her, but he refuses, remembering his promise to Su. He cuts off his arm that was affected, and leaves her to die. The carnivorous plant is about to consume Jia, but she is suddenly freed, and she is found by several assassins. She is brought to Jin and informs him of Yun's betrayal. Jin declares that traitors must be punished and sends the assassins to find him. Meanwhile, Mei appears badly injured after fighting with the golem, and Ling comes to her rescue on a flying fish. He takes her to the woods and treats her wounds, but when she wakes up, she gets mad at him for his strange method. They are suddenly interrupted when Yin appears and falls in front of them. He warns them that Su is in danger and passes out. Su continues together with Sean, and a lady beetle climbs onto Su. Sean warns that it could be poisonous and shoos it away. As they walk, Su realizes that she has been poisoned. Sean says it must have been the bug, but Su thinks it was the apple that he gave her. Sean quickly carries her, and Su is powerless to stop him. They end up in a cave, where Sean encounters Liao. He tries to convince her that he is trying to take Su out of the space to see a doctor, but Liao sees through his lies. Sean admits he was offered 10 city-states in the north in exchange for Su. He blames their master, saying Jin was given special treatment while he was sent away on a mission for years in the north. The two start fighting, and while they are busy, Su manages to summon her dagger and stab Sean in the back. Liao then manages to catch him by the neck. Sean is surprised that this is the way things would end for him, and Liao finishes him off. She then gives Su the antidote to the poison, and Su awakens. She tries to offer her the acacia fruit as thanks, but fails, because Meng had eaten up all the fruits in her inner space. But Liao reveals that her scars are already healed from the first fruit Su gave her, but she used this as an excuse so she could follow her around. She reveals that all her actions were at the instruction of her master to protect Su. Su becomes curious about her master and asks about his character. Meanwhile, Yin awakens and finds Mei and Ling have patched his wound. They ask him why Su is in danger, and he tells them that there are more assassins after her, as well as Jin. Suddenly a wolf emerges and bites Yun. It drags him away, and he is brought before Jin and Jia. Yun is surprised Jia is still alive, and disappointed to see Jin working with the assassins. Jin hands him over to Jia for his punishment, and he sends his assassins to find Su. Back at their camp, Mei and Ling debate if they should save Yun. They think that he would have been eaten by the wolf, but Mei wants to rescue him because he had mentioned Jin. But before they can decide, they are approached by a shadowy figure. Su and Liao spend the night together, and Liao seems to be finally over Jin. In the morning, Jin suddenly appears, but Su stomps on him because she is still mad at him for leaving. Jin apologizes and tells her that he has found a map for the secret grounds. Now that Jin is back, Liao decides to take her leave. But as she is leaving, she feels something is wrong, noticing the marking on Jin's arm to be of the assassin clan. She rushes back, but the two are nowhere to be found. Meanwhile, Jia punishes Yun by feeding him to the carnivorous plants. She casts a spell on him and leaves, as the plants are left to devour him. She meets up with the other assassins and they tell her that Jin has found Su. But instead of taking her back to their headquarters, it seems he is leading her to the Temple of Inheritance. Jia uses her tracking spell and sees them heading for the temple. The Red Lord, Han, appears and says that he never trusted Jin. They join hands, and Han teleports them to the temple's location. Thanks to Han's superior space magic, they arrive before Jin and Su. Han tells them that this is also a cemetery that the goddess mercifully created for all the casualties from their war. He swears to sacrifice Su to bring back the goddess and restore the assassin clan's power. Later on, as Jin and Su arrive at the temple, Jin warns Su to think carefully before accepting her mother's request. Su asks if he knows something she doesn't, but Jin just promises that he will be there to support her no matter what she decides. They share a kiss, and Su heads on to the temple. She heads up and enters through the portal. Jin then opens up a space and tells Han that they are too late and Su has already entered the temple. Han breaks open the space and realizes they were tricked. They were in a fake area created using the acacia tree's paper magic. Han wonders why Jin would join and betray them, because now he has lost the ability to kill and will be affected by their punishment magic. A magic circle forms under Jin and he suffers from their spell, but the Grandmaster suddenly appears and says that because Jin took his spot as the White Lord, he is no longer a part of the assassin clan and is free to kill the traitors. He blasts them all with his magic, and Han tries to escape using his space magic but gets stopped and forced to the ground. He is surprised that the Grandmaster is on another level because Su's mother had given him half her power. The Grandmaster tells Han that he lost his way and finishes him off. The Grandmaster then goes to tend to Jin's wounds, and Jia manages to grab the red token. There is a flashback to Jin's confrontation with the Grandmaster. The Grandmaster tells him that if his plan succeeds, Su will ascend and he will not be able to be with her. Jin doesn't like the options between this and the Assassin Clan's plan, but he decides to work with the Grandmaster as long as he promises to let Su decide on her own. The Grandmaster agrees with the condition and hands his white token over to Jin. The Grandmaster tells Jin that he is now the master of the assassin clan, but he has no interest in it and destroys the white token. We also see that Yun survived, thanks to Mei and her master. They all end up meeting together and wait for Su to return. Meanwhile, Su climbs to the top of the temple and discovers a statue of her mother, who suddenly appears in front of her. Her mother explains that this is just a part of her consciousness that she left behind. She tells Su that she has been watching over her whole life and has seen all the struggles she has been through. She then goes on to explain that the world is made up of 3 realms, but it is actually possible for anyone to ascend to the God realm with enough hard work. But the gods intentionally lied about this so there would be fewer gods. Because of the rules of heaven, every 100,000 years, a being known as the God Slayer emerges to kill all the gods, and they wanted fewer people to suffer this fate. So when the gods heard the God Slayer was reincarnated, they tried to find him before he awakened. But as they were searching for the child, there was a traitor among the gods, and she was the only one who managed to escape to the human realm. After that, she founded the Assassin clan and continued to search for 100 years, but as she was about to give up, she was given an inscription written by past gods who were looking for a way to survive. And that was for a powerful space sorcerer to create an entirely new universe, free from the heavens rules and the God Slayer. Su gets excited when she learns it was her father that gave her mother the inscription. She asks about his whereabouts, but her mother tells her that he died protecting her during the war. Her mother tells her that, to create a new universe, she would have to sacrifice herself and ultimately become the space itself, so she would not be able to be with Jin. Su is conflicted with the decision, and her mother tells her to think of the greater good and says that she has 3 days to decide. Su gets teleported outside with the others, and the space begins to collapse, so they all retreat back to Hell City. They enjoy a meal together, and Su finally realizes the identity of Jin's master to be Master Long, and thanks him for taking her in and training her on Earth. Long reveals that Yun was a double agent against his father and the Assassin clan, and only stabbed her because it was the Grandmaster's order. He says that his feelings towards her have never changed, and asks her to come back to him, but Su awkwardly rejects him, and he leaves. Later that night, Yun goes to find Su, but is confronted by Jin. Yun believes he is still in Su's heart, and the two start a fight. As they battle, Yun recalls how he was always there for Su, compared to Jin, who has only been with her for a few months. But Jin responds, saying that time is irrelevant when you meet the right person. Jin overwhelms Yun in the end, and tells him that he does not understand Su. Meanwhile, Long and the Grandmaster relax in the hot spring, and Long recalls how the Grandmaster almost killed Su. When he fought with Han, Su was dropped off the cliff, but thankfully Long was there and caught her. The Grandmaster realizes this and feels that he owes her. Back at the Assassin clan, the assassins wonder what to do now that Han is dead, but Jia reveals the red token and claims the position as master. She tells them all that they have a new goal. Instead of trying to turn back time, they will take Su's space power to get to a brighter future. Meanwhile, we see that King Ouyang survived after being thrown on the battlefield by the Grandmaster. He is joined with the northern forces and orders them to invade Hell City and capture Su. Su stays in her room, thinking about her decision, and the days pass. As the last day approaches, Master Long goes to visit Su and sees that the Grandmaster is also there. Mei and Ling come running and tell them that they have seen a lot of suspicious people arriving in the city. Long finds it strange because you can only get into the city with a pass. They check his room and see that his seal is missing. The Grandmaster tells them that there must be a mole among them. They quickly go to check on Su and find it to be Liao pretending to be her. Yun also reveals himself as the one who stole the seal and sold the travel passes into the city. He says that everyone is after Su, but he is leading them into a trap because Su has already left. Long wonders how they could teleport away without the Grandmaster knowing, but realizes that they used the secret underground tunnel to escape. Long is angered that all his disciples betrayed him, but Mei tells him that this was Su's decision. Back on the night that Jin and Yun fought, Su approached them and explained her plan to them all. She apologizes to Yun for being unable to be with him, but he is still determined to help her however he can. Jin and Su reach a point where they have to say their goodbyes. Su tells him she loves him, and Jin responds by casting magic on the lava to make molten hearts float in the air. Back at the Hell City, Master Long punishes Mei for betraying him, and ends up sending them all off to fight off the attackers and clean up their mess. Jia and the assassins arrive, but the Grandmaster confronts them. They try to use their punishment magic on him, but it doesn't work because he is no longer part of the clan. He decides to not kill them, not wanting to destroy what his master created, so he sends them all away. The city has become a battlefield, and King Ouyang gets confronted by Yun. The king tells him once he reverses time, he promises to love and cherish him in the next life. He attacks Yun, but gets defeated in the end. Yun tells him he will spare him if he makes him king. Ouyang hands over the king's seal, but tells him that in order to escape from the north, he made a deal with the leader and offered up most of their lands. Yun declares himself as king and orders the retreat of his troops. Master Long confronts the leader of the northern forces, but is surprisingly blown away. As they are about to clash, Jin suddenly returns to aid his master. The man throws spinning discs at him, but Jin's lightning destroys the weapon. Jin charges up his attack and blows the man away. Meanwhile, Su gives her decision to her mother. She doesn't want to sacrifice herself, but also doesn't want to let her mother down, so she decides to become stronger, so she can defeat the Godslayer one day. Her mother supports her decision and unlocks the Dragon Ring's full power. This raises Su's power to the next level. And with this power, the acacia tree also evolves, and Ming transforms into a human form. Her mother warns her that the Godslayer will awaken soon, so she must train even harder and find allies she can rely on. Her mother tells her that her father's soul is sealed in the dragon's ring, and Su wonders if she can bring him back. A beam of light shoots up into the sky, and everyone watches from a distance. Long is surprised that the Grandmaster let Su make this decision, but he says his debt to Su has now been paid. Su had always felt like a prisoner to destiny, but now she finally feels like she knows who she is, and is the master of her own destiny. She is joined by Jin, and she wonders what their future holds. But that's where the series ends. Remember to give the video a like, and tell me what you liked most about the series in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.